Yeah. Can you fix
Like
that?
jazz
Yeah.
or something.
I'll call the meeting in order. Welcome everybody to the May 11th, 2026 council meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Counselor Leftridge,
Here.
Counselor Nenely,
Here.
Counselor Walker,
Here.
Counselor Gabrielle,
Here.
Counselor Blank,
Here.
Counselor Dowd,
Here.
Counselor Waterman,
Here.
Counselor Fisher,
Here.
Mayor Hunter.
Here. We have one item on the work session agenda. That's fiscal year 2026-2027 budget review. We have three items under that. General Fund Administrative Departments, Developmental Services Department, and Public Works. Mr. Nygren, staff report.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, thank you. As the mayor mentioned, are going to be going over kind of general government administration tonight, development services, and our Public Works Department. Obviously, the general fund in of itself is made up of primarily property taxes, and then, but although a majority of the budget actually is kind of public works, enterprise funds, and things of that nature. Just as far as protocol, it's, pretty informal. Just go through the budget. We'll go through all those departments, funds, kind of one by one. And then also if council has any questions as I go along, just feel free to jump in. I'll just kind of scroll through the document and take a look at it, kind of go over some high points. I will say in general, a couple kind of clarifications. There was, in the article today, there was a lot of high points, but this budget doesn't include hiring any police or fire as part of the levy. Those were hired, as part of previous fiscal years. Although, and those services are in place, and a high point of that is that, our fire response times have actually gone down about 25% with the new fire personnel and all the equipment along with that. I will say, though, the budget is part of the EMS levy is as far as being proposed two more FTEs as for the firefighters within that. But the 11 in law enforcement and 14 firefighters were hired in previous budget. This budget really is a continuation of previous work plans the city council had approved, whether it's water, sewer, street maintenance, as well as general fund, the EMS levy, which have really kind of standardized that process going forward. It's created kind of the rate structure and things that fund all these capital projects. I will say that in addition to that, the budget, as we move into this next fiscal year, there's more facility planning coming up for water and sewer. Following that, there will be additional rate studies going into next year as well, so that those kind of work plans can continue to move forward and continue to make sure that those funds have adequate funding within them. As far as, the budget itself, pretty status quo. Once again, implementing all those facility plans and the capital projects, there's a lot in there. So when I say status quo, it's a lot. There's, like I said, a lot of capital that goes into these. As you know, I had kind of sent out that summary of some of the projects we've done from FY24 going into this year. About $120 million in capital projects. And that just kind of highlights as well what the budget is and what the budget isn't. I know a lot of times, the media and some of our local legislators like to grab a hold of this $189 million budget number. Although that's a number, the way kind of the government accounting works, it's not always the case. For example, our budget last year was about $181 million, but as of kind of currently reporting, with the city's spent about $60 million. And the reason is you have these huge capital projects that sometimes can take 2 or 3 years to come to fruition. Some of them are $20 million plus. There's loans tied to them. There's grants tied to them. So, I just, want the public to be aware of when you see $180 million, that doesn't necessarily mean you're paying $189 million just as part of your property taxes, which the property tax bill in general makes up a pretty small proportion of the city budget. The general fund is about a little over $17 million. So in this particular budget, the general fund goes up a little over 3%, and that is primarily property tax driven. That it will include, a 21.3 reserve, and this is all preliminary at this point, with the city policy being 20%. I do project that as we get to the end of the fiscal year, there'll be a good amount of cash carry over as well, and the city kind of will have just some discretion as to what it'll want to do with that, whether they reduce the number of mills going into the next fiscal year, or maybe take care of some deferred maintenance of some city facilities and things like that. Some other highlights within the budget, really the increases are associated with salaries and benefits. Maintenance and operations in the general fund is pretty much status quo or down a bit, but as you know, we did just go through a market rate analysis, so this first year, there's a little bit larger hit, but as you can imagine, just making sure we can get employees and retain employees is an important aspect of being able to provide the city services. Some other highlights just going through the budget, the ambulance fund, that third-party billing service. You may recall last fall, the city went through the third-party billing service. That is actually showing a pretty good, return on investment. The city has been able to collect quite a bit more going into that. Our budget is pretty conservative with the revenues because we're not sure if we'll be able to maintain that. But certainly that has helped the city general fund going into this next fiscal year quite a bit, as well as workers' compensation. Our rates have gone down quite a bit. That saved the city a lot as well. But I say that with a bit of caution because we changed providers, which some of the competition went away, and I suspect as we move on, kind of the monopoly on that, the rates may start to climb back up. But as of now, the rates did drop quite a bit going into this fiscal year, but it's probably not something we'll be able to rely on as we get into future fiscal years. Kind of some things to keep in mind. As you recall, Senate Bill 542 and House Bill 231, which are also subject to lawsuits as we speak, did change property tax, and how that affects, municipalities is certainly something we need to keep an eye on. Just not knowing exactly how that's going to affect municipalities' revenues going into the future. Really, the big thing was this right here, which actually went into effect last fiscal year, but the reduction in essentially residential property tax dropped to 0.76, whereas it was 1.3. Obviously, when you're a city that's made up of primarily residential homes that are actually kind of lower, I mean, even a house between 400 and 1.5 million is still lower. It's at 1.1. So the way it is kind of progressive tax rate. So up to 400,000, you pay the 0.7. Say your house is worth 600, you pay the 0.76 up to 400, and then that additional 200, you'd pay the 1.1. So that's the way it works. But regardless, this obviously will affect our revenues pretty dramatically in the city, especially with the number of housing units coming on. Likely, we're not building many second homes and million-dollar homes, so that will affect the city budget moving forward. And this is honestly where you heard about the commercial property rate increases. It's because that burden shifted from this to commercial. But as new growth comes on, we will be getting that lower revenue from the residential properties. But there is more changes coming in this fiscal year, which I highlighted in the budget letter. Really, what the point I'm getting at is there's just still some moving parts here that you don't necessarily want to. We want to be somewhat cautious with appropriations and things till we really know how these state law changes are going to affect the city in the future, especially given the lawsuit and how that could affect things, because that also could affect the TIF districts and things like that, because a lot of the TIF districts are in commercial areas. They actually saw an increase in increment because the burden shifted commercial. So as you do projects, you just want to make sure we're being cautious that we're not doing too much, knowing that state law could change, which could affect ultimately our ability to do projects in the future. As I mentioned, the fiscal policy for the city is 20% reserve in the general fund. The proposed budget's at 21.3, providing the same level of service in the city. Did do a 10-year forecast. Last year we did close the revenue and expenditure gap a bit more. It did spread out just a bit, likely because of just the market rate adjustment for employees. But as you do look at the 10-year forecasts, well within the range, especially knowing with some of the TIF districts and stuff sunsetting in the future, we'll be able to kind of shift that. And as usual, that's kind of the budgeted amount come year end with, kind of cash carryover from vacancy savings and such usually end up quite a bit above that. Kind of just highlighted a couple of relevant topics. Like I said, the public safety, the main thing is the new personnel in both fire and police is those efforts, like really all those personnel are fully independent now, gone through their training, all those things, and getting those enhanced levels of service in the community. The big thing in this budget is starting the third fire station, which is also built into the levy. Just so council's aware, have to be cautious because there is going to be, more firefighters hired for that station, but you got to get the fire station constructed. Ultimately, the money used to build the fire station is what will then fund the personnel. You can't do both, but kind of gradually going into that is going to be the plan. As we kind of get through the year and turn unknowns into knowns as far as construction costs of the fire station and things like that, we may be able to proceed a little bit more aggressive, but until we really know, get through the design of the fire station and what some of the engineer cost estimates and all that will be, we don't want to move forward too fast. So likely going into next fiscal year, may be able to kind of accelerate some of that hiring process, but don't want to kind of overburden the levy at this point in time. Land use, kind of the big lift has happened with the Malupa, but looking forward, I do know there'll be, not only just general applications we get all the time, but looking at starting to work on the pro housing grant and specifically a housing study associated with that and zoning and subdivision updates as the council feels necessary. Housing, kind of talked about that a bit, but this just gives you a brief kind of outline of the number of units in the city. Big spike here in 21. Saw a low point here in 2024, although, you really should average this out. We've had so much under construction. Some of these projects can take 3 years or more from start to finish. So really it's an average of this. I wouldn't necessarily take that as an indicator that housing wasn't being built as much as there was so much going on that it just took some time to move forward. Did see a jump. And, in early in 2026, but are seeing some high numbers there as well. Urban renewal, it is a big part of this budget. I will say once again that the way the budget is lined up, we kind of allocate some money towards redevelopment that may or may not even happen throughout the year. That is also a slight increase in the city budget, and that's just because the TIFs have gone up in general. But any project that's going through urban renewal is going to require urban renewal approval as well as council approval. So even though it's budgeted in there as like redevelopment, ultimately any project, whether it's Main Street or anything else, would have to come before the council before those projects would actually be funded. Like I said, the general fund did not have any additional FTEs. There was 2 proposed FTEs under the levy, and then there's 2 FTEs within kind of more the infrastructure side, split between light, street maintenance, and water sewer utility billing. Those are just paid for out of separate funds. Do have some capital projects with some of our facilities, although I will say this line item here, we did kind of initially have an FTE in the budget, but, until we there's been a lot of remodeling and a lot of additions done to some of our facilities with the new kind of the parks relocation and the redo of that building, as well as now the public safety building and police over there. There's new bathrooms and things over there, so there likely will be an increased demand just for janitorial services. So we did increase the funding, knowing as well as we go through this year and we kind of see what those demands are, that we may actually need an additional FTE in that regard in the future as well. Most of these we'll actually highlight as we go through each particular fund. As I said, the Parks and Recreation, the Parks and Master Plan that we're currently working on, that has, the draft is at 90%, so that's going to be coming before council here in the coming weeks as well. And then certainly that'll create a work plan for the city and the council moving forward into future budgets. We're gonna be getting into all the public works operations today, IT, ambulance. This is what I was talking about here. If the since there are some new council members, generally the general fund subsidizes the ambulance fund by a tune of about $800,000 a year, so it's significant. So the more revenues we can collect from the services we provide, it then provides for more general fund, so the city would have the ability to provide any additional services that they would choose. Just a breakdown of general fund revenue. I said, for the most part, it's property tax driven, 53%. Expenditures, personnel is where a majority of it comes from. And it's a breakdown of some of the city budgets and what they've done the past year. And I know, most of you are aware, but the general fund as well is primarily police and fire. 75% of that is police and fire, with the remaining departments making up the rest of that. So just the health of the particular funds. And like I said, personnel did go through the market analysis of 2 of our units, as well as non-union employees, which are in this budget, using that. And with that, I'll just kind of work down to the general fund components. If anybody has any questions, these are just some exhibits and such of our governance, FTEs over the years, positions. This will be finalized in August. This is another thing that happened. So when the levy was passed by the voters, it was done based off a number of mills. I believe it was 60.9. And then, but after the tax changes by the legislature last go around, we had the choice to keep it at a mill-based or going dollar-based. And the council went dollar-based. And then they would get inflation based off of that. So that is what would fund the emergency responder levy. We'll be going over the component units as well here, with them presenting in the coming weeks. Administrative transfers, IT transfer, central garage. Debt. We'll say one thing on the debt service as well. Susie, tell me if I'm wrong, but the wastewater treatment plant original construction was paid off this last fiscal year. Was that the case?
No, this is the last year.
Last year. One more year on the wastewater treatment plant, which is huge.
Fiscal year 27.
Okay.
Hey, Jared.
Yes.
Hey, can you go back to the city garage? Is this just a recap of last year, or it's actual versus what actually happened? Is that what that is? That's the transfer to the central garage, correct?
That's correct.
This also shows like what the amounts were last year, and then how much was actually paid with the FY24 budget. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure if that's on it, but it'll be actually on the central garage fund where you'll be able to see the actuals as well.
Yeah, okay, that's what I
Yeah.
was asking for, so I'll
Yeah.
wait till we get to that. Thanks.
All right. General fund balance. Once again, this is an estimate. At the end of the year, we do project pretty good cash carryover that the council will be able to utilize. Budget by department. Org chart, fund position. So I'm just gonna work down and get kind of into our admin departments here. General fund revenue. Any questions there? you'll notice this dollar amount there, that is a transfer from the pro housing grant, and that was for staff time to develop Malupa. So be working with the state on getting a reimbursement on that, as well as for the facility plans, which you'll see throughout the document, as well as for a housing study. So total revenue, expenditures, and cash carryover. All right. I'll use a Doug line here and just say we'll just go past that one. Kidding. Any questions on that? Pretty, nothing there. Human resources. Really what I'll do is I'll try and highlight where there's been any big changes. Human resources, you would see a drop, but that's, likely due to the city manager search, and that would have been the reason, but without any of that planned in this year, that would be the budgeted amount. And I'll say, on this particular one, I do feel like the budget's healthy enough. I know it's been an ongoing discussion about kind of the council compensation. I do have a methodology in order to do that. It is not a significant bump in order to do it, to bring it kind of up to, I guess, the market, if you want to say. I know it's been talked about a number of times in the past. I didn't want to just put it in there because typically it's been council precedent that they didn't want to do that. However, I will say I'm incomfortable. Getting that back up to market, it's not a huge adjustment. Certainly would get the council a lot closer to being where other comparable cities are. And the budget certainly could handle that. So as it is, left it status quo, but certainly going into final budget, I feel like there would room to make that change if council wanted to do that.
I have one question. What's happening with dues? I mean, they seem to be going up significantly. And I noticed that that's not true in any other department than
It's not in the city manager's line item as well.
Didn't League
Yes.
increase their dues?
okay.
Yeah, that's the league.
League had a methodology shift. What was that, 2 years ago, and how cities certain sizes paid, so.
Yeah, it was fairly substantial.
Yeah, it has been a topic of conversation though, and, I'll just say from a personal perspective, I do feel like the city gets a lot out of it, especially going into a legislative session where we may need to kind of get our voice behind some of how these tax rules affect this, a city or a municipality. Certainly, property tax is likely going to come up again, TIF at the legislature is going to come up again. So being able to communicate that, and really also, I know they're hard at work. I mean, given, obviously, we're a member and been paying past dues, but they're certainly trying to create some strategies and working with the cities even moving forward. Been communicating with them quite a bit. And really it goes through all of our departments, and I think that relationship overall does benefit the city, but.
I'd echo that too. I think being mayor, I've participated in more meetings with League than I did as a council member, and just seeing kind of the effectiveness of even just that information flow between the cities is really valuable, especially when it comes to state legislature stuff and what's coming down. I know we don't necessarily always agree with the position maybe the League takes, but I think overall the benefit is quite considerable to the cities, even if there's some disagreement on particulars. Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to dive into city council discussions now on salaries? Or you want to wait?
I think it's worth, talking about it.
It's always been an issue, and I'll stand with what I've said before. You see Whitefish goes up. I am of a belief that we should adjust this. I believe Ms. Gabriel has stated she served for 6 terms for the same salary. I don't think that's appropriate. I think it should at least keep up. We should get to a normal base and keep up at a small amount, something less than 3%. I just want more people to run. I literally begged people to run for this position, in my position, and people don't want to. They're like, well, I have my children. They have daycare. They have to get doggy daycare when they go out of town. And I know it's rare that we do travel, but if you're doing your job right, you're putting in a substantial amount of time, and there is a cost to that to people. And I would just like to see it meet market rate. I'm not asking, I don't think any of us want some huge amount. We do it because we care. But I really want the single young lady to be able to run and be able to manage her costs, whether it be daycare, doggy daycare if she travels. I want to have it interesting to people, and I don't think money is always it, but I do think we need to keep up. I just think that to get to this mid-level point, we saw all the numbers last year. I don't recall, it would be like a $2,500 or $3,000 bump for council members and about the same for the mayor.
A year.
Excuse me?
A year.
A year.
Yeah, not month.
Excuse me, a year.
No, you didn't say, you didn't mention, but I want
Yeah,
people
yeah,
to know.
yeah, oh, yeah, no,
Sorry,
We're
good
not,
catch.
we're, yeah.
And this has been, I'll be completely honest with new council members. Mayor Johnson was adamantly that we serve our public, and Chad was always with that. I believe Sam's voted that way. But I just believe that we need to keep up there too, or someday no one will be interested when it costs more to be on council than the small stipend that we get. And it is rather small. With the hours you all put in, you're all very dedicated. I know this will hurt when it comes out that I'm the one promoting this, but it's for others. It's not for me. It's for others down the road. I don't care if it's phased in. I look at Miss Gabriel, I look at those that served, and I really think it's inappropriate that it just has stayed stagnant for 6 terms with one council member on this council. So I would be a proponent of a mid-level adjustment. I think you, in the past, did the same 5 comparables and were much lower than that. You read in some of these articles, when I was looking into this last year, some of these council members out there, which is ridiculous in larger cities, $250,000 for serving on a city council, totally inappropriate. Our wage too is totally inappropriate. So I'm looking forward to other comments on this. Again, it's about others that are evaluating if they would want to do this and be whole from it and put the time into it to do it right. Because if you're doing it right, you're putting some time into it above and beyond these few-hour meetings every Monday night. So there's a cost to that, and I want to promote this if you all so agree. I'm not going to die on this mountain, but I believe in it.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Hey, we do have a number of new council members, so I would like to kind of just get a feel for thoughts on, this has been a repeated conversation over the years. So yeah, just get a feel for what others think.
Yeah,
Mr. Walker.
in general, I think, yes, we should keep up. There is definitely a cost to this. It shouldn't be a career at this level for sure. We're not looking to make money. I had been thinking about this before I was on council, and I was wondering if, there was a way we could do this to where it doesn't take effect until the next election, so that we're not voting on our own pay increase necessarily. We're voting on the next councilor's election, which may or may not be ourselves, as a way to kind of dodge that immediate conflict of interest of voting on our own pay. But yeah, I'm generally in favor of this. If it's that big a problem, that someone can always donate their salary. There's nothing stopping them from donating their salary to charity. So if it's that much of a moral problem to take that money from the city, they can always give it back. So I'm in favor of keeping it at a fair, competitive level.
May I, Your Honor? My only concern, I understand your analogy of the next, but I think it'd be kicked down the road again and be somebody else's problem. I think for budgeting,
You would pass a resolution, it would take effect like on that date or regardless, like they couldn't repeal it before it took effect. So,
I believe anybody can repeal anything that.
well, I guess they could.
So that would be my concern. I'm not arguing with you whatsoever, but I think it's just time, I'd love to hear Carrie's thoughts if the mayor would so allow on this, because she would be like, well, run again to maybe get another $1 an hour. I would be interested in her thoughts.
Yeah, Ms. Gabriel, how long have you been on council again, remind us?
Since 2003, I think.
23 years, and it's been the
Yeah.
same amount for 23 years?
It has been, and we've had that discussion many, many times. It started, Mr. Hafferman was very, very opposed to it. And then we would have more discussion about it. And then over the years, again, it's been more people opposed. And, you know, Sam made some good points, and I think Wes made some good points. The one thing to think about, some of us are paid hourly in our real jobs or our daytime jobs, if you want to call them differently. And for those who are paid hourly, myself included, anytime we meet, I have to adjust my work schedule. So I may not get paid for 40 hours that week because I was in DC or I was in Helena, or, you know, when I used to sit on the league board. So that's one thing I think that I don't know if everybody thinks about, because not everyone is paid hourly. But it is kind of a big deal when you do have to leave town for city council obligations. I have to choose whether or not I want to use my vacation time or I want to go unpaid. So think about that, and who then is going to run. That's what Jed was, I think, really trying to point out, is it's got to be someone who can afford to run that's going to run, rather than someone who really wants to serve.
Mr. Fisher?
Sorry, Sam. And I look at that with all you, many of you are still working, and to take vacation time when you'd probably rather be with your family instead of hanging out with a few council members or hundreds of council members in DC or Kansas City or Salt Lake or wherever we end up, probably isn't your first choice, but you're taking your vacation time from your work to, so, and I get that, I get what those who feel strongly about this have said in the past, that it's just our duty, but I want to see full ballots. I don't want to see people not participating because they just can't pencil it out, and just adding to what Carrie said. Sorry, Sam.
So, I, like Jed said, have been one historically that has always voted to remove any raises from council. I still, ideologically for myself, I still have a struggle voting for our own raises. But I get it happens, and it sometimes needs to happen. I think from the last time that this was brought up and discussed, I believe Whitefish has now started getting paid, and I think theirs is significantly different, so I think it may have changed what that average may come out as. So I guess what I'm asking for is, if we're gonna look at it, right, I'd like to see what that new refresh of not only the salaries, payroll costs, but also all of those other things that are taking place into our wages, right? Health insurance, retirement PERS, those type of things. To see, do other counselors actually receive the same type of benefits that we receive? And then I'm willing to look at it. It's just gonna be a tough one for me to do. But I do not want to talk anybody out of it either if they feel that it's a good direction to go. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, and if staff were to propose something, it would take into account the totality, just like a union contract or whatnot. You have to kind of factor all that in. It would be the same. So anything that staff would present would take all those kind of extraneous things into account as well.
Mr. Water.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher, for bringing up the issue and really framing it. I mean, having been on the council before and coming back on and seeing everything be the same, I just worry that we are making it a larger issue for future council members as well, because the adjustment's becoming more and more difficult. And I think that that's undervalues what the role is. And again, I think that there is actually just a participation factor, which is really difficult, and we want to make sure that it is equitable for anybody to be able to be a council member. And I think Mr. Walker brought up the solution is that if that is not what you want, you can always turn it back. So I'd be supportive of it, just mainly because I do think that we've sort of held it for too long, that it's becoming a larger issue going forward. That, you know, how do you do that adjustment? It's just going to get larger.
To be fair, I didn't know that this was a paid position when I applied for it. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, it is just a volunteer position. I mean, if you took the amount of hours that we spend doing this, I'm pretty sure it would be under minimum wage by a lot. It's kind of like a raft guide salary. But, you know, I think that, you know, I'm lucky to have a law partner that allows me to, you know, spend my Fridays working. I have a lovely wife that usually takes care of this guy. Wake up. And, you know, I've been looking at donating, you know, my stipend to maybe the Parks Department for some of those scholarships. I'm still looking for a good recommendation. But, you know, I'm lucky that way. And so I do think that if, as Ms. Gabriel was talking about, you know, this does impede upon people's schedule, we want to incentivize people to do it. It's an important thing, and I very much appreciate where you're coming from and your perspective, and generally in support of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Dowd.
Hey, thanks. So, once again, I have a dissenting opinion here, I think. So with the amount that we're talking about, I think that raising it up a little bit isn't going to help that much. It might help a little bit. My worry is that, you know, I think of this as a you know, a service kind of a job. So you're here to serve the community. And there's a tipping point where, with the salary, if you get up to the point where people are considering it as a side hustle, right, instead of a service to the community kind of gig, I'm opposed to that. So the other thing that's interesting is if you raise the salary of a city councilor or a mayor position, it actually costs more to run for that position when people run. So keep that in mind as well. So any raise that we get is actually more that you have to pay to actually run for, you know, run for council.
Yeah, because the filing fee is tied to the salary.
What is it now, Your Honor? $50 for a council member to?
Yeah.
So it could go up to 75?
Depends how much.
I don't know what the ratio is, but yeah, it wouldn't be, given the numbers we're talking about, it wouldn't be significant, but something like that.
I think it's 10%.
10%? Okay.
Well, there's another point, if I may, Your Honor. With what I'm seeing going on, especially with other elections, a person is putting out $2,000, $3,000, up to $40,000 worth of signs now to run for an office that doesn't even pay them back for their signs if they don't get donations. I mean, if one wants to run and they're having to take vacation time, and to get on council, they have to spend $10,000, $15,000 to run for a job that pays minimally, that's not right either. I mean, and that seems to be the going trend now, is between flyers in your door, all the crap you get in your mailbox, and the signs. It's not cheap for a guy to run if he doesn't have a lot of friends or family, right? So, I mean, there again, there's a cost to serving that nobody is considering, and forget all the time that it takes to run a campaign or to be involved. But I just, to me, this is about others. This is not something selfish. And I don't think those that would vote for it or support it, it's not anything selfish. And to keep up at something less than 3% or 3%, like there was large market adjustments during COVID, 4 and 4.5. They say we do it, tie it to less than 3% or less, and we take care of business for other council members that are going to be struggling with this for the next 20 years if we don't take a stand at some point.
I guess that leaves me. I have to be honest, I didn't expect to be paid either. This was something I did because I wanted to be contributing to my community, and it was a service. And I do have to take leave without pay if I conflict with my job hours. So I do hear what you're saying. It isn't my happy space. And I'm not opposed, because I do agree that what you're saying makes sense, and I was surprised how much it did cost. Even though I ran unopposed, I went and did the due diligence because I felt like the community had a right to know what I was running for. So I did the website and the flyers, and yeah, it adds up. It most certainly does. So it is limiting if you don't have those resources in terms of who can consider running. So I hear your argument. I also hear yours, Mr. Walker, in terms of it would be, for me, feel better if I did it for the next council and not myself. I'm struggling with that. I guess my big question would be, if we were to raise, and I understand it's not much, what would not be included in the budget if we made the choice to give ourselves raises? Would there be a significant cost in an area that we're identifying as important?
The way the budget's presented, the council could choose to cut something, but you wouldn't necessarily need to cut something to fund it and still be within the reserve.
So I wouldn't say negligible, but it's not a clear consequence to certain programming or people.
It's not knowing if there's any other programs and things like that the council is looking to add or wants to fund additional things. Certainly, it's additional funding that could go towards other things. That's certainly the case. But with the budget that's presented, it's not going to make an impact, that big of an impact with what a market rate adjustment would be.
Okay, thanks. Well, with that information, this is a struggle for me. I would, it's not a motion that I would make, but it is a motion that I will support for the reasons that have been outlined. Because it again gets back to, am I making the decision for others? Yeah, I do think it's essential that we get diversity, that, in other words, who runs for council should be anyone who feels like they have a opportunity to contribute to the community and put themselves out there.
And I don't need a motion at this time. It's
Okay.
just getting a feeling as we look forward to adoption of the preliminary budget and getting into the final budget. So I'm not looking for that at this point in time, but just a little bit of guidance as we do move forwards.
Yeah. Oh, Ms. Gabrielle?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wondered, Mr. Nygren, what would the process be if someone did want to donate that back? Is there a way for them to do that? Like the way Mr. Lethbridge mentioned, possibly donating back to scholarships. If someone was inclined to do that, is that a possibility?
You know, I believe so. I haven't done my research into that, honestly, but I mean, it's taken as salary towards a council member. So I don't know why it would be restricted in any way, just like you could use it to go buy groceries or anything like that. So, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to donate it to anything of your choosing.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Fisher, for raising this again this year. And I, agree with a lot of what you said. As I've said in past years, it's not about the amount for me. Same thing, I'm here because I care about it, and I'd be here if there were no pay. But I'll also say I put an incredible amount of time into this work, and it's definitely not reflected by the amount we're paid, and it won't be reflected by the amount we would pay with an adjustment either. what I have always said is that to me, it's about the formula, that it's not up to future councils to vote for themselves, some pay raise, because I think that's the reason why it's been a discussion for years, because that's incredibly awkward and nobody really wants to do that. At the same time, as Ms. Gabriel spoke to have 23 years of it not moving at all, if some council 23 years ago thought the pay was appropriate for that time, with all the inflation and everything else, then surely it can't be worth that time, that amount 23 years later, right? So there has to be some ability for it to adjust with inflation, cost of living, everything else. And so I think making this adjustment based on, and it's a little bit different because we have the 5 above, 5 below for our staff, because they can go and take a job with another city, right? We don't want to lose well-qualified people. We're not going to go and be a city council member in another community. This is our community. So it doesn't have the same logic. At the same time, we have to base an adjustment for that lost 23 years on something. So I think it's appropriate that we take the 5 above, 5 below to figure out, a reasonable number to make that adjustment after the 23 years. And then I think a COLA adjustment each year, but cap it. My concern was always, given our experience with 6-7% inflation over the COVID period, is that all of a sudden you could see a balloon, and I don't want to see that either. So having a cap 3 or 4%, I think we may be entering in another period of high inflation, so that cap may prove important in the coming year or two. But that would be. And then, my past proposals was then you would revisit and look at the 5 above, but I honestly don't, as long as you're doing some adjustment each year with the COLA, I don't care that much about that. So I think just keep it simple, COLA adjustment each year with a cap would be appropriate. So that's where I'm at. So I think there's enough direction there to move forward. Yep.
All right.
Yes, Mr.
Just to ask a question about another controversial subject, chairs. And Mr. Nunnally's back. So is that in the previous year's
Correct.
office budgets?
That's what,
And-
there's $10,000 there. That's what this dollar amount is. So we're still in this fiscal year, so we're looking at ordering chairs here. Amy's actually been working on that.
Thank you,
We'll
Amy.
actually, as we move forward, it's not really appropriate for tonight, but looking a little direction from council on which route they want to head. Obviously, chairs, whether you want them to look good or you want them to feel good. So kind of getting a preference from the council on that as we move forward, so we make sure we're making the right decision, so.
But again, that's part of the reason the office supplies budget goes down in
Yes.
the subsequent.
Yep.
Thank you.
And these were the same chairs when Miss Gabriel started as well?
Probably. Mr. Fisher.
The awkwardness of this too, by handling this, I think takes this away from future council members down the road, where we don't have to waste, when all this important stuff lies before us, waste 15, 20 minutes talking about something that should have been so basic since Miss Gabriel first ran for office at a small cap per year. I think it saves future council members a lot of hassles and the uncomfortable one of whoever introduced it, so.
On the chairs, I will say, because that has come up in the past, I, for one, don't care about that. I'm comfortable with the chairs we have, but I think the issue, because the price tag is a little bit eye-popping for chairs, right? And I think that came out in previous years when it hit the papers. We're talking about the price tag of the chairs. I think ultimately there are people who have various, health issues. Ms. Dahlman, I remember, previously had some issues. And so there is kind of a health aspect for certain folks to have chairs that are, more appropriate. So I certainly support it in that case. That's one. I'd be okay with having chairs just for those folks and leaving the rest, but not something I'm gonna push, so.
Well, it's in the budget, so we'll be working on that. All right.
Could I have a chair that's tall enough for me next time? Please? Thank you. That would be my one. I don't care how it looks, just if I can sit up so I can see.
That's mine as well, so I don't need to sit on phone books.
Yeah, that's my largest interest in the chairs is actually the participation side. We've noted that previous council members have had physical impediments that have made that challenging. But then I also just see it from having sat in the audience and watched how we all look up here. There's a professional engagement if you're able to see over the dais and be able to see the audience. I think it helps just with the dialogue.
And just so the public knows, it's not just council chairs, but it's also staff chairs here.
I'd like to be able to see.
Yeah.
Our HR department would say ergonomics is important. So we do spend a lot of time in the chairs. City clerk, as you look, not a lot of changes within here. Said unless you see something, let me know. I'm just gonna kind of scroll through our general government admin, finance.
Could you talk a little bit about the contracted services under finance?
Here. What was that, Carrie? I might have to get back to you.
Okay.
I don't got my notes in front of me. We did go over it, but I'm not quite sure. You see actuals in the past were up there.
Last year was an anomaly with quite.
I'm guessing that's for an audit, isn't it?
No,
No?
no.
You can get back to me, no
Yep.
problem.
Can we go back to the city clerk budget just real quick? So I know we've talked about it in the past, and I think there's been some movement in a direction and with how we handle PIO items. And I think Amy does a good job at that role, but I think there's also times that we have seen recently where after hours, like the water main break, right? The information that came out didn't come out right away, and that had nothing to do with, please don't take but would we need something in this category to try to help with that PIO? Public Information Officer, sorry.
Yeah, communications department. Now that we're gonna talk about communications department.
Well, and we have, right? We've got, Amy does a pretty good job, right?
Yes.
But I agree, it is a big job, right? And, we see it with the county, right? At the county, we've got a PIO now. The sheriff's department has a PIO, right? It is, when you're communicating with the public, at that point, you're absolutely right, Mr. Walker, that it is critical to be getting this information out to folks. And again, this is nothing against you,
You're doing two jobs. I think you're doing two full-time jobs. We're asking you to be the city clerk and the communications department. And the city's gotten big enough, I think, that we need a full-time communications, whether it's a single person or a department of one or two. I think we need to talk about it, at least. Because a lot of people are upset about the communication, I know. When I heard on the campaign trail, there was a lot of call for more communication from the city. And yeah, it's a big ask. So it definitely seems like a full-time job to just be the communications officer. And it's unfair to ask, I think, our clerk to do two full-time jobs. I think we should talk about it.
Your Honor.
Yes, Ms. Gabriel.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would agree, and Amy's actually credentialed to be a PIO, and could do that job all on its own. I've been the PIO for a number of different organizations in my career, and I'm pretty sure that the cities, the larger cities in Montana, and probably even some smaller than us, have full-time PIOs. So there's a lot more that could be done if Amy's time was freed up to either be the PIO by itself or to be the clerk by itself. And I think, Doug was also credentialed. We all belong to this same organization called the Public Relations Society of America. And the whole job could be expanded and could be very helpful for the city manager as well and all the department heads, not to have to be ready to talk to the press all the time. So I agree that the time is here. Mr. Walker, thanks for bringing that up, to have that discussion. I don't know how quickly we could make that happen. I don't know that it could be in this budget cycle, but I do think we need to have that conversation.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm willing to have the conversation. I do think the county has done a much better job. My years with them, we didn't really have a go-to person, and sometimes there could be mixed messages, which were even more confusing to the taxpayer. And I see the county is really doing a fantastic job now that they have that person responsible. So I'm really willing to talk about it and would be willing to evaluate how much time it takes for a year, what's currently being done, and kind of rate that as we're going on, and then adjust from there, and maybe consider it in the future. If Amy could keep track of how much time, or Jared, that's really your full-time job anytime anybody calls you, right? But it would be, between police information and keeping up with what the public wants to know, and everybody wants to know everything right now, and they want accurate information. And I think it's inappropriate when it's a council member. It should be a go-to person, because we all have different opinions on many things. It would be nice to have some consistency and professionalism beyond what we have now, not bashing a thing, but I'd like to evaluate that for a year and see the time, the wage, and kind of each of us watch what the county is doing, which I think has been quite good for the last year and a half, 2 years, I think.
We've
Is
had,
it longer?
yeah, about 3 years.
Okay. Very interested in it.
Any other thoughts?
I'm supportive of it. Again, I would agree that you can see a large change once the county started to have PIO, and just it is consistency of messaging. It is also just really helps make sure that there is somebody public facing. I agree also that it is one of the comments that we hear the most is, are we communicating well enough? And because we have so many changing things about it being a growing city, do you think that it's one of those things that we have been the smallest big city in Montana for the longest time, and it's time that we really need to, one, just realize that we're not going to be the smallest big city in Montana forever. We're significant growth. Communications is a huge part of that. I mean, I would prioritize this. I know that the other part of it is a lot of other larger cities have an assistant city manager. So I do think that is a way to make sure that we're making sure we have the staff that's able to do the communication that's required for the work, and how it could be utilized. And I think that that's actually where the county's really shown, is that all the department heads are able to find that unity and have somebody who's advocating, communicating, helping them with their communications, which helps when we're in large construction projects and things like that. There's so many different spaces where it is the frustration that we hear from the public is that they didn't know. That's a communications issue, and that ends up being, if you're in like emergency response sort of mindset, communications is the first part that you do before you get into your triage. I mean, so communications is really an essential way that we engage, but also it helps us listen. So happy to also think about it as a study of where we are going, because again, I think that we're rapidly changing, and there's some changes here that, because we are seeing the salary adjustments with city manager, to make sure that we're thinking a little bit like a larger class city. it might be time to consider that and do a study on it or so.
Any other thoughts? No. Ms. Black?
Yeah, just one question. I know one of the things that I heard when I was out knocking on doors was the need for a compliance officer. And so while I absolutely agree with everything that's been stated here, you build trust with the community by consistent communication. That's pretty well recognized. So I don't disagree and do support that as well. I just also know what I heard in addition to communication was we want a compliance officer to enforce what's on the books. And I know Mr. Nygren, we've talked a little bit about this, so that would be just a question in terms of my constituents to make sure I weigh those priorities to see what's possible.
Do you want to address both the compliance officer idea and then also just kind of what the budget looks like in terms of additional staff hires?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, essentially adding staff affects the overall budget. Although I will say, yes, there's an impact throughout the city. I mean, you saw even the responses, staff at the director level, and everybody have to put into communicating to the public, which, has been part of our job forever. It's what we do. I will say, certainly supportive of the idea. I do think that, this budget may not be the right time, but certainly moving forward, having a work session and actually coming up with a plan of how to do that and what it would look like, whether it is an assistant city manager position or whether it's a PIO officer, what is the best path forward? Because the other thing to recognize is technology is changing fast as well. Some city roles are changing, so there may be some time that could be freed up to do other things. There's just certain roles that can be done, a lot more automatively than they were done in the past. So there may be an opportunity there as well that would like to discuss before jumping full on into it. We'll be talking a bit more about the kind of, whether you want to call it code enforcement officer on Wednesday, but that position and the opportunity to do those duties is kind of already built into the existing city budget and FTEs. It's just more transition of existing duties, but a PIO or something along those lines would be a new role. But I think, and they don't necessarily have to wait all the way till next fiscal year to do that. There would be the ability for the council to add a position in, but before doing that, just deciding what that looks like would be the best path forward. I wouldn't want to just shove it in here in the next month. So,
Yeah, I'll just, for my part, I certainly support everything people said about the importance of communication and would support, kind of a dedicated role. Just in kind of, since the start of the new year where, we've kind of taken a more proactive step to try to respond to all emails that come in, make sure everybody's getting a response and knowing just how much time that actually winds up taking. You wouldn't think, but just, we get emails almost every day, and if you're responding, and every email you have to go track down the department head and say, hey, what's the deal with this? And, so I know Mr. Nygren, that takes quite a bit of his time and stuff. So it makes sense to me to have a position like this. But it's also, we also have a budget where we can't just, hire because we feel like it, right? And, there's other hires I'm interested in exploring too. So the question is, what's the priority? So I think it is a discussion to talk about, okay, what does the budget allow in terms of, where's that wiggle room on new hires? And then what's the most pressing need at this time? And what do we want to prioritize as council? So I do think it's for, further discussion and something we can look at moving forward. I'll follow up on.
Jared, I know what the contract was. It was actually the Gravity software fees for the upcoming year. The budget software that was purchased in 24-25 is in that line.
So it's going to be 15,000 moving forward. That's an annual fee.
Yep, it's part of that service along with consultant fees for the ACFR, so. Yep, and that final budget will be presented in that format this year.
Yep, I forgot to mention that. So going into the final budget, the new software will be utilized, so it'll be a much prettier document, so.
What is the Grizzly Security Contract Services? What do we have them do?
They pick up our daily deposits and deliver from the grocery stores any water payments that are made in the local stores.
Okay, thank you.
City attorney. Highlighting this, there is a bit more, not sure it's gonna be utilized, but, you know, our city attorney did mention, you know, it's actually outlined here in the narrative, but, let's see.
Is this the compatibility software?
No, it's, right here, yes, right here. Just with the number of kind of mental health cases coming before them, you know, there may be certain situations where they may need to contract out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did have a question about that, the software. Maybe it came up last year, but they're building out a new program to be compatible with the court's program. And I'm not a tech person, but it's like a brand new program that's like tailor-made for, it just sounds like something that's going to be glitchy and cause problems. Is there, I don't know if maybe Mr. Dowd, being more of a tech guy, can answer this, but I just worry that, you know, we sink some money into something that's built just for us, just for this compatibility issue, and it just seems like something that.
Is it a custom application or just custom integration?
You're asking me an IT question. So.
I do know that happens a lot, right? You'll buy off the shelf, but then you'll need custom way to integrate it with your stuff, and so you'll have to have developers write that little widget that lets them talk to each other. So that's less of a problem than writing the whole program from scratch.
Okay.
But without knowing.
It says it's being beta tested in Illinois at a prosecutor's office, so I don't think it's specifically for us, but just utilizing that same system.
That's why I'm kind of guessing it's some kind of connector.
I mean, don't know that we have any other choice. It just
Don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
Is that part of the IT budget actually? Or is it billed out to the attorney from IT?
It was here.
Yeah, it's the attorneys.
Yeah.
And that's just a carryover, right? Because it wasn't expended in
Correct.
26, right?
Yeah. Municipal court. Questions there? No changes.
I have a question back on the court. Is it in the court's expenditure or in the police department's expenditure for our court police? Or bailiff, whatever they call them.
Police.
It's in the police, okay. And is that still a state mandated position? I guess we can talk about that when we get to the police, but it used to be like we had no choice. We had to hire somebody there full-time.
Yes, that as well as obviously then you have to have backup, you know, for when that person's out.
Yeah,
So.
okay, thanks.
Public Works, very little in the general fund. Not a lot change here. Questions? Did I get your question on that? The GIS?
No, yeah, I had asked a question about aerial imagery and the cost of that, because I use GIS in my work, and the aerial imagery is free, and so I had a question about the cost of it, but it was got a response from staff that the quality that they need for their work is much higher than the quality I need for my work, and so they need the resolution level is considerably different. So
Which that is accessible to the public as well. That's part of our whole GIS portal. All the near maps and updated imagery is available to the public. It's not just staff as well, which is a good service.
So on that note, last week I talked with a couple of folks from our Office of Emergency Services, and they had come up and asked why there is a discrepancy between Kalispell's GIS map and the county's GIS map as it relates to some fire service area. And I believe they said that we're working together, but it came up in my mind of when that does happen, I'm assuming the county's is the one of record for when it comes to where limits, boundaries are.
It would be. I mean, we share all the shape files and stuff. So yeah, I mean, the county would be the record keeper of all those, whether it's ward maps, just like a council election, like they would be the areas. So I'm not familiar with the one you're talking about where there would be a discrepancy, but I mean, I guess if you were to say, yes, the county would be the official or just an additional service on
official
top of that.
Okay, the one
They
that,
get it from us, so they're the official
I think
record
he's talking
keeper.
about-
so
the
here's where this came up was the roundabout behind Walmart up there by your place. On the city GIS map, it shows that that's within the city boundaries, but on the county boundaries, it shows that that's within the county. And it is more not on major pieces of property, but on roads. And where that becomes kind of in my mind, a trigger point then is who's that record of choice when the 911 call is made for a motor vehicle accident? Where is that gonna be falling to are we gonna dispatch West Valley Fire or Kalispell Fire?
So
Right.
yeah, we're getting in probably some nuances there, but I'm guessing if it's the roundabout, I'm thinking about the northwest corner of that was annexed into the city, but the county should be updating because when the council annexes something, the resolution is sent to the county and they should be updating their maps as well.
Okay.
How that's translated to the sheriffs and such, I
Okay.
can't do that. I mean, I do know they use it and, the KPD is aware when we annex things, but that's the process of how that should work. So there, certainly when we see something at staff at the planning department that we know is annexed that hasn't been updated, we'll call them. I'm not familiar with that particular one.
Okay.
But they do get the official resolutions as well. So-
Okay,
But like I said, I'm not sure how the sheriff's department utilizes those county maps, if they use them at all, but.
sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. City facilities. Let's see. I think this is where there was a slight increase, just knowing that we've had some expansion so that we can get some additional janitorial services if we need to do that over at KPD. And got a list of the building improvements in this year. I would say that there is a pretty costly item depending on the cash carryover that staff may be presenting. It's the chiller at the public safety building as well. That's outlived its lifetime by a lot, but it does have a cost of about $350,000. So if that's something that we're able to do going into the final budget, it may be something that we'll want to propose, but is not in the budget, in the preliminary budget.
Is the landfill and recycling going down because is that Glacier Gold no longer is that no longer having their services or?
545.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's building improvements.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was misreading. Apologies.
Is that the one you were talking about? Is it looker at? 'Cause
Yeah,
it's pretty.
I was looking at the building improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the wrong line.
All right.
Sorry.
All right. Cape Police will be doing on Wednesday, as well as fire. So planning department. Not a lot of changes here. Increase in training, just with the number of staff in, the certifications, and all the conferences and things, this budget was, as you could see here, the actual. We were starting to run up against just training costs, so looked at bumping that up a bit, but other than that, not a lot of changes.
Mayor, one question for you. I see gas in quite a few of these, so two questions. One, and I see you're increasing it, but I also wonder if there's any conversation about electric vehicles or other ways to anticipate the gas becoming and continuing to go up. I mean, I don't know. Right now, that's what's happening, right?
Okay.
Yeah, well, we.
Uh-oh, I've begun a Pandora's box. I
Yeah,
apologize.
that's been a discussion in the past. I actually was going to raise the gas as well because and actually some of the budgets, it looks like gas allocation is going down, which given what we know is happening in the Middle East and stuff, I don't know if that's realistic unless there's fewer miles being driven. We could be looking at considerably higher gas. There was a discussion of electric vehicles in the past. The past council wasn't supportive of kind of moving in that direction. We did have hybrid vehicles for the police department, and they had problems. I think the problems were maybe on the gas side of the hybrid vehicles rather than on the electric side, which is interesting. That maybe I'm not. That was my. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's correct or not. I thought maybe that was the case, but anyways, yeah, did you want to add anything?
Well, yeah, I think it's just been whatever the priority of the council were. There hasn't been a push to go that route at this point in time. I think a lot of it is just the climate we live in and how harsh our environment is and such, not to say that's a reason or not. But if that's a direction council wanted to head, I would say probably the first step is doing some sort of study on what our fleet looks like and how something like that could look. So probably the first step would be to fund a study to analyze this, what kind of cost savings we would or wouldn't get, what kind of climate savings we would or wouldn't get, and then council could make those determinations. So that would be the route I think you'd want to head.
I think we'd have to establish charging stations as well before, but yeah, I mean, anymore, electric vehicles have like 250-mile range. So I know, with some of the plug-in hybrids, like I have one and it has like a 30-mile range before it switches to gas, and that's pretty limiting, though people like the hybrid model. Anyways, there's a lot to consider there.
Yeah, well, one of the problems we ran into when we were talking about this before is we don't have the expertise to service those vehicles, so they had to be sent away for service. It was really expensive. The other thing that I just, we took a look at this a few years back, and one of the other problems is whatever the car's manufacturer says the car can do, it always does less in Montana, especially in the winter. They have all really underperformed in the winter, but the technology improves every year, so it might be worth taking another look at. But we do have a problem currently with the central garage. We just don't have the expertise to work on those vehicles, and sending them away for service is extremely expensive.
Yeah, and I just know owning a hybrid with electric component, the winter affects, I'd say like 10 to 20% of the charge. So if you get it all electric and you have 250-mile range, in the winter time you'd have 200-mile range, something like that, so, but our staff, if it's, parks or whatever, they're not gonna be driving 200 miles in a day, right? So as long as they have some place to charge it, that won't necessarily be an issue, but, yeah, but there's a lot to consider there.
Development, I said, very small portion of a position funded out of the general fund. This position is also generally a position that's tied into this, also comes out of the tax increment finance districts as well. So pretty small, not a lot of changes here. Let's see here. Then we're gonna get into development services. Obviously did planning there. So Community Development Revolving Loan Fund, these go back some time. You can see we do still have, I believe, one outstanding loan through this. So this balance will just go up on a yearly basis. Really, these go back to CDBG monies. When these, for revolving loans for small businesses. So we, city, when this loan is paid off, could potentially utilize this money for CDBG type uses, whether it's housing, low-income housing, something along those lines. You may recall that city did have some other community development revolving loan funds that transferred over to the county for their economic development portfolio, only because they have a loan officer. The city doesn't have a loan officer, and at this point, we were kind of duplicating services, so we transferred some of our money over to them. But given we do still have one outstanding loan on this, the fund is still there. City, in the coming years, will have the ability to determine what it wants to do with this.
But the funding, even though it transferred and it's a county agency, the money stays within the city limits. Our
Correct,
money.
and it still has to meet the criteria of what the program was for. Same here, it was another revolving loan fund. Like I said, at this point, getting it down to pretty much at this point where the fund will likely go away here in the next year.
Can you increase the size of the?
Sure can.
Yeah, just so. There we go.
This kind of goes to our overall budget, some of the pass-through money. You see the Morningstar project, which is a mobile home park there on the southwest end of town. The city helped that particular development get all these loans. But they are passed through to the city. So we're working with the mobile home park to, you'll see these will be going down throughout the year. This project should be done here before too long, and these funds will be expended as that development proceeds. Same with Green Acres, it's just immediately adjacent to Morningstar. They obviously didn't get quite the amount of growth, or sorry, it's they didn't get quite the amount of grants, I should say. They got $750,000, but there is also an SID tied to this, so any costs above what they've even got from the grant can be paid back through the SID. And that's tied into the budget as well.
Special Improvement District.
Yes, Special Improvement District for water and sewer. Pro Housing Grant, which ties in, the city was awarded through the state, which was through the federal government, about 1.1 million. With 126,000 allocated towards a housing study. These will go towards the facility plans we're currently working on. And then this was that general fund transfer I showed you earlier for staff time. And PJ, do you want to give an update on kind of the status of pro housing and housing study and all that?
Okay, so the Pro Housing Grant was something that the state applied for. We initially applied several years ago and didn't get it the one year. The following year, Department of Commerce through Helena applied for that on behalf of 7 different cities. And they received that grant, and our portion of that was the 1.1 million. What's a little bit funky with that is that it's from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to Department of Commerce in the state, and then the League of Cities is assisting in processing that. At this point, we've been awarded that grant, but we don't really know exactly how we're supposed to have it administered. So it's kind of sitting there in a sense. We were told that we could expend funds and then be reimbursed after the fact on that. They've shifted the date, so Bozeman got caught up in that a little bit. So, but right now it's sitting there. It's money that was awarded, but we don't really have a process for that. And we're working with the League of Cities right now. Actually, on Monday we've got another call on exactly how we're supposed to go about doing that. So, so it's sitting there, but that's kind of the update. I'm not really sure exactly when we'd be able to start being reimbursed for that.
So I know that's something that, the council has talked quite a bit about in the past. We're certainly eager to move forward with the housing study, but we also want to be sure we're going to get reimbursed for it. So likely here in the coming months, we'll have a little more direction and be able to, work with the council on developing a plan for what that housing study could look like, as far as kind of just a general market analysis of the housing, but as well as what kind of the city's options would be moving forward with, kind of whether it's incentivizing development or how they could use TIF or city, just really what all the programs that are out there for the city to help development, especially of affordable housing, like I said, as well as any of the market analysis. There's been a lot of housing built, and how's that affecting housing and what our needs will be over the next 20 years, so.
Is the concern about reimbursement just for the housing study or the entirety of the 1.1 million?
It could potentially spill over to everything else. So there was a window of beginning in mid-August of '24 where we were supposed to be able to spend funds and be reimbursed. We didn't actually start spending any funds until the following year. So when they shifted that window by 5 months, we shouldn't be affected by that. Bozeman was affected by that pretty strongly. But all indications are we should still be able to be reimbursed for that. But like a lot of different grants at the federal level right now, it's kind of in a state of flux. So
We be concerned then about these transfers to the water sewer general fund if indeed they aren't able to be reimbursed?
Hold on, let me see where we're at. So those aren't, the water and sewer wouldn't be general fund, and those, I don't want to speak for Susie here, but those funds themselves would be able to handle those costs, but the reality is when we put the grant in, given the timing, planning for growth, that's where those were allocated. The bigger one would be the 350,000 for staff time and the reimbursement. So it's a reimbursement too. We've already put the time in. We're pretty confident, although, all the grants at the federal level, like I said, have been at a state of flux generally. But given where we're at, the time we put in, and we feel like no matter what the window is, we put the time in and we should be eligible. And, we don't know for certain because, we've also received an energy grant that we haven't been reimbursed from yet, but we're continuing to prod. But we're pretty confident we'll be okay, but certainly if things change, we'll have to adjust and, we'll make council aware. But, at this point in time, given what we've been told and the work we put in, we feel pretty confident that we should be reimbursed.
So it's more of a reimbursement than a going forward allocation?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Jared, the transfer to the water and the transfer to the sewer fund supported our facility plan updates, which we did fully fund in our water and sewer funds. So if or when we receive the transfer, it'll be great because that monies then will be reimbursed for the facility plans. But as we speak, those professional services are actually funded already. So it would be a reimbursement.
Great, thanks for the clarification.
And that would be the same with the transfer to the general, because it was staff time to develop that plan.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't doing any unfunded mandates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the argument was Malupa was an unfunded mandate, and we had to
Yes.
put staff time into that. The city had to pay for staff time in order to come into compliance with that. So that's the idea behind that, so.
So the water and sewer facilities was funded by federal, or will be reimbursed by federal?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question about that, but I'll wait until we get there.
Brownfields assessment grant, this one's kind of been hanging out there. There's only a little over $1,000 left over. The city originally had $400,000 for site assessments. We went through all that money and doing assessments. We continue to do these in coordination with the state. And we facilitate those to the state, but the city itself is pretty much very limited grant funds left and just trying to honestly find a way to expend that last $1,000 there to close out that fund. Likewise, we do have a revolving loan fund. This is different. It's not a grant, it's a loan. So the city, and it also has two different components to it, petroleum and hazardous. This has been a bit of a tricky one, but staff is working hard, just getting this out to the public, and letting them know that it's eligible, but this would have to be paid back, just like a revolving fund. But really haven't been able to move that as well as we would like, but certainly that's the goal moving forward. Let's see here. This will be the last one. This is a grant down at the airport for taxiway and beacon improvements. I believe I just got the last invoice from that here this week, so this one should be closing out. Let's see, I guess gotta go to building, go on tips. I'm gonna do this first. Building department, it's part of development services. Revenues, do see a slight increase in revenues with building permits. Expenditures. So this fund used to only have basically 2 years of reserve in it. Now you could have 3, which is a state law change. The goal would be to be able to get back up to that point. Obviously, this particular fund, it funds itself and through building permits, and it's driven obviously by construction and stuff, and there's so many ups and downs. The idea would be that you'd have enough funds in there to maintain your staff through any of the downturns if so needed. Any questions there? There's 2 new vehicles purchased in this year's budget. And then we'll go. No more questions. Any questions on the building budget? I'll go through the TIF districts, and that'll be it as we get into public works. These are the taxes generated. We'll go to
I want to explain how TIF works, just because there's continual confusion about that in the public.
Yeah, so a TIF district, first of all, it has to be within a redevelopment area. You have to create an urban renewal plan about why it's an urban renewal plan, essentially. Create findings as such, and it's all allowed through state law. So it's not just, local things. State law allows for it. And really, it's for when you have a development area where it's maybe tax revenue or it's seen an area decline, it's got a need for infrastructure, and property tax revenues may actually be declining, so you're trying to reinvest in the area and kind of kickstart it for, say, the next 100 years. That's the idea behind it. So what it does, it is not an increase in taxes of anybody in a TIF district. What it does is it sets a baseline. So, for example, the downtown TIF was created in 2020. So whatever the overall taxable value of that district in 2020 was, it freezes it at that point. You're still paying taxes. So any years beyond that, that additional taxable revenue goes into the TIF district, which has to be reinvested in the district. It can't go into this general fund. It can't go for any other projects outside of the district. So you would reinvest that money in a district. So say you create a district that needs investment and it's got a total taxable value of $100 million, and 20 years later, the value is $120 million, you can reinvest that $20 million in the district. And that's the idea behind that. And it's really just to spur redevelopment in an area that has seen a decline, and you justify that through findings of fact through an urban renewal plan. So,
Thank you.
And I,
Just to,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. My question there is, because of the changes with the property taxes and those areas include a lot of the commercial.
yeah.
I mean, are we anticipating that there's sort of a bubble that will happen this year, or a surplus, a larger?
There actually was last year. So the TIF districts, so across the city, taxes did not go up.
Right.
Across the city, all commercial taxes went up because they're paying for the reduction in residential property taxes. And that's what happens. So TIF districts, because property taxes, or generally a TIF district is mainly commercial, they caught that extra increase as well. So they did see an increase. But likewise, like I was saying at the beginning, tax law could change and it could go back down. So we got to be very careful, when whether you're bonding against it or you're doing projects, that you take into account that it, especially given legislative times, can be relatively fickle. It could go up or down depending on what the state legislature does.
Okay.
So,
And that was gonna be the only thing that I was gonna bring up is the last couple sessions in Helena, the TIF districts have been targeted
Yeah.
by the legislators, and I'm only assuming that's gonna happen again this coming session.
There seems to be an obsession in Helena about TIF districts.
Yes.
So just so I understand about like the downtown TIF, for example, the real estate taxes that go and fund that, that is just typical property taxes. But instead of going to the general fund, it's the people living around that district, or is it the entirety of the city, are paying their property taxes specifically for the redevelopment of that area? Is that correct?
Only the increase.
So the still proportion is going to the general fund.
Yeah.
So it's any portion after it's created wouldn't go to the general fund.
Got it.
So in my example of, say, the 100 million, all that taxable portion of that 100 million would continue to go to the general fund. It's only the portion, say, above 100 million, say that the value went up to 120, that portion would go into the TIF district. And it is not paid by all the residents of the city. It would just be that district itself. And it goes into a fund that then can be utilized to reinvest in that particular district.
Got it. Can you speak to the redevelopment expenditures for 26 and 27 in the downtown TIF?
Right here,
Let's
or
see.
all of them.
No, I think that's not the downtown one, is it?
Yeah. So I could just say like this 950,000, we don't have anything. It's just there. So if an urban renewal project was to come before council, that money's already budgeted, but council would have to approve that project still. So there's no projects funded out of that, but it's budgeted. Otherwise, if a project did work its way through urban renewal agency and the council, you would otherwise have to do a budget amendment as well as approve a project. So that 950,000, either way, any project that were to come out of that would have to come before council.
I think it's worth noting that the other year, so we had money sitting in the TIFs that we didn't have necessarily projects at this time to apply the money to, that we chose the council to apply it to some infrastructure capital projects that we had identified within the district.
Yep.
That, and so that's what you're seeing
That's
with
what these are, right?
these, these three different redevelopment projects. That was a choice by council the other year to start applying it to some of these infrastructure needs that we have within the district.
And those also helped offset some of the street maintenance costs and helped keep that a little bit lower. So you will see that in the coming years. Actually, if you're to look at 3rd Street East, just right back there, portion of that was paid out of the TIPS as well. That street looks great. And those are all eligible costs because the roads and the construction and the curb and the gutter is all part of that infrastructure within those districts that needs work, so.
It's Billy.
Given I'm a neophyte, can you talk me through how one gets those projects started? Is that the residents and the TIF coming forward? Is it city council putting something forward? Is it the city staff and manager putting something forward? How does that work?
Kind of all of the above, so
Oh, okay.
there's anything, even if it's generated by the city or city staff, it still needs its work its way through urban renewal agency. There's essentially an application and findings and a staff report that would be done. A recommendation would come through the urban renewal agency to the council. But you've kind of got a slew of whether it's a public project. For example, the Parkline Trail is a public project, right? Main Street would be a public project, but a private business owner that has something, or a property owner within a TIF district is also eligible per the TIF policies. So the city has TIF policies that outline what is eligible and what's not. And as long as it's in accordance with those policies, they would be eligible for TIF funds as well. You could see that actually the Business Improvement District had applied, and you could see the line 721. So they're getting $15,000 a year to help kind of engineering and architectural services for facade improvements for downtown business owners.
So if we go back to the trees from the week before, is that something that we could do?
Yes, except for it's a lot bigger issue than just trees.
Yeah,
It's
right.
pretty much, it's the sidewalk, the road.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be essentially part of a a broader plan of Main Street and essentially a rebuild of Main Street is like when you do something like that. And that would actually be a public project.
We can do that too.
Or you can always donate too.
All right. West Side TIF. And this confuses some a bit. You'll actually see a transfer from 3188. So the real estate tax is actually going to a debt service fund first because we've got a bond out. And then we transfer, once we know that our reserve is good enough, we can transfer it into the West Side TIF. So you can see the West Side TIF is pretty healthy. And this is the one I mentioned at the beginning. When it sunsets, about $1.5 million will be able to go back to the general fund. And this expires in 2038, sunsets in 2038.
Oh, so there's a $1.5 million increase from when it was established, is that what you're saying?
That'd be the city's portion. Because there,
Yeah, but
you also
the
have
rest of that money goes back to the state, right?
no, you got the county and the school districts as well.
Okay. And just to make another comment about that, if we're not gonna use that for economic development, if we're gonna take it back into the general fund and then the rest goes to the county and state or whatever, that helps no one, right? So if you're gonna have a TIF fund, which I'm not a huge fan of, but if you're gonna have a TIF fund anyway, it's better to use that for redevelopment within the area than it is to let it sunset and go away and give it back to the government.
It's gonna be a project, is what you're saying.
Any questions on the West Side TIF? Once again, you could see as far as redevelopment, there's a good amount budgeted there, but not necessarily any projects lined up in the interim. Although the city has received some recent applications from private property owners and as well as some city projects that will be coming forward as well in this coming year. That will have to go through the Urban Renewal Agency and to council as urban renewal projects, but aren't necessarily lined out like some of these other ones that council had previously approved are. Old School Station, these ones are sunsetting. This is down on the south end of town, so these funds sunset. These ones aren't quite as healthy as some of the other TIF districts, so not that much that we're turning back, kind of going to Sid's point. Let's see.
We could put like one extra fire hydrant in and kill that $2,000.
Yeah. The Rail Park, Ted, it's a targeted economic development district, which is essentially an industrial TIF district. This is what helped create the rail park, tied in with the Parkline Trail as well. There's potential for future expansion down there on the north side of Rail Park Drive, and that's kind of the idea within the plan of how that could work. Not a lot going on. Health permissive levy. And with that, we're into kind of our enterprise funds and public works. If you want to just roll into that, I'm gonna have to transfer this over to Susie.
transitioning. All right, well, good evening, Your Honor and council members. For Public Works, we'll start off with the Light Maintenance Fund. And I'm just gonna scroll through like Jared was doing, and if you have any questions, just go ahead and interject at any point. I typically don't have control of the funds. It's usually, I'm just talking through it, so we'll have to. And just so y'all know, I can't honestly read what's up there. I can only read what's on my screen. It just, it is what it is. So I'm gonna try to make it so, is that good?
Yep.
Everybody see that? All right. Okay, so Light Maintenance Fund, we have a light maintenance district and it encompasses the incorporated city limits. And it supports the maintenance of our street light infrastructure. The fund, and typically, and forgive me if you already know this, but our beginning cash are always transferred from the end of the year. It's up to our beginning cash levels, and then we have our revenues coming in and then for this fund, it's on our assessment levels. Our expenditures are always summarized in the couple line items here, and then our ending cash. Sometimes we refer to that as our reserves, our ending cash. So just kind of typical nomenclature that I use in talking through things. But again, just go ahead and if you have questions, let me know on that. But as I'm looking and pulling together these funds, I'm looking to make sure that our ending cash meets what our financial policies tell us as we adopted the rate schedules, that we're meeting those financial policies, which really is the reserve amounts. We're able to perform the levels of services that were set when we adopted the rate structure. So I'm kind of going through and checking the boxes on all that too. And that's pretty much the same on all of the funds in Public Works. So as we scroll into our light maintenance expenditures, you'll see that, and it's going to be very typical in almost all of Public Works funds too. Our salaries, and then our M&O expenditures, and then capital outlay replacement, and then totals. And it gets much more complicated as we get into some of the other budgets, but light maintenance is a really good one to start off on. In this year's budget, we do have a new FTE for the streets and the light maintenance, and that was a programmed new FTE that we recognized when we set the street maintenance, when we reviewed the street maintenance fund. So it's coming in this year. And that's really to help support the traffic signs and signals workload and our street operations in the winter times, because you'll see them, they'll come in as a traffic signs and signal technician, but we'll have them take over a main route for streets when we're doing plowing. So, and that was all, apologize for the new council members, that was all stuff that we discussed when we set the rate schedules and reviewed streets. I can go through these line by line, or I could just say, is there a general question anybody has on any of the expenditures?
I think just highlighting the, questions and if there's any big changes in it rather than line by line.
It's a really a pretty straightforward fund as far as increases in the line items. For electricity, obviously, as we get new lights because of new subdivisions coming in, the electricity costs are raised. And then we also anticipate, and it's kind of a potential, we think that Flathead Electric will potentially have a 4% increase on electricity, but they have not quite said it yet. But so we did take into account that potential 4% increase from Flathead Electric. Their schedule for adopting rate increases just kind of, it comes a little bit later on. So we do coordinate with other utilities to see where or when their increases are going to happen throughout the year. And that is for the municipal lighting. So it may not be for what your general household, electricity consumption. This is for municipal lighting, process.
They increase.
Yep.
I know I've asked this in previous years, and forgive me if I've forgotten your response to it, but the idea of dimmable streetlights, I know other cities are implementing this as a cost savings measure where it's LED dimmable and it's programmable where you can even do it by neighborhood, but if you have a certain luminosity until say midnight, and then you kind of dim it a little bit for those hours when it's not as much traffic or whatever, as a way to save on electricity costs and stuff. Have we looked into that, or is that a possibility?
Well, the lights that you see, the majority of the luminaires are actually flat rate lights that are owned and operated by Flathead Electric. So that type of programming, that probably initiative would come from Flathead Electric, whether they want to institute that type of process on their own lights, right? So we're paying a flat rate for those. So, but they own and maintain them for us. We do maintain about 588-ish city lights that are metered. So there are certain ones like the downtown 5 globe or the 12-foot luminaires. Those are city-owned, city-maintained lights for those. And they do have a photo cell, so we do have a photo cell on them. I don't know if there would be a huge cost saving because they are all LED. We already did transfer them to all LED lights, so I don't think that there would necessarily be a huge savings on that. The cost for the programming might not be, so we still have to pay to program and institute all that. So I have not looked at any of that part of it, but so.
Real quick, I assume Flathead Electric does dark sky compliant streetlights?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And to be able to, Flathead Electric has their own set of standards. So you see that in our standards for design and construction, the Flathead Electric standard lighting. So we follow that so we can get them onto the flat rate program because it is a pretty big cost savings for us to be able to utilize that process.
What's that difference, do you know? The rate difference.
I just know there is a good, because it's a municipal rate instead, yeah. I just know there's a difference, so, but I haven't done a comparison.
With the dark sky, we have the structural regulations, but there is a luminosity part of that's not part of our code. And I think they recommend 3,000, whatever the measurement is, or below for street lights. I don't know what ours is, if it meets that or not, but that would be something to possibly look at in terms of improving the dark skies ordinance, to look at luminosity measurements.
That would be outside of the budget, but certainly as part of a dark sky discussion, which I know that was talked about during the land use plan, and there was kind of some mixture there, but certainly, obviously, the safety of the public and the lights are a bit different than the private, but yeah, that would certainly, if council wants to have that discussion in the future, it would, but it wouldn't overall affect the budget per se. It's just, the luminosity that comes out of them.
All right, any other questions on light maintenance? Also, just for general knowledge, anytime there is anything, a difference in some of the line items and the expenditures for the next year, we usually provide an explanation in the background, just providing those highlights, just to be really transparent to the public so they can see what that is. Okay, so then moving on, we'll move into the gas tax. So this is just a revenue that we receive as a part of the gas tax code. In 2023, they combined gas tax with BARSA funding, so you'll see the funds are together. and what those appropriations are. So this year, we anticipate we're going to receive about $975,000 worth of revenue from BARSA and gas tax. We also always transfer in $20,000 from solid waste for alley paving, so we can support our paving of alleys for the routes where we have solid waste services. And then we're gonna just bop right into the expenditures. Really, there is not a lot, there's really no changes from the previous year. So the large line item, the 368, that's where we have all monies to do our pavement rehab and restoration projects. And I send out kind of emails and with the anticipated schedules for this upcoming summer and spring. So that's a lot, that's where those, it is captured in that line item. Everything else, did we increase? The cost for painting, paint striping materials, our thermo that we use to put on the ground for our symbols, our stop bars, our crosswalks, we've had an increase in cost there. So we anticipated that cost and put that in that line item for this year. We also went through the program and we had a goal to put more down this summer and spring also. So the cost actually will reflect the amount of work we're doing with those. Is there any questions on these?
I think it's always good to always acknowledge Frank Garner's work on this, because we got a lot of stuff that gets done because of the gas tax and BARSA. And that was a heavy lift by Representative Gardner to do that. But I would just point out that electric vehicles don't pay that. But they use it.
And we can talk about the hybrid vehicles and our experience when we get to Central Garage. We'll talk through some of that. Yep.
We do pay it in another way.
Yeah, exactly.
One question I had on the sidewalk construction. So there's that $55,000 allocation to the sidewalk fund. And last year, the actual expenditures was $8,800 of that $55,000. So clearly, that program is not being utilized, and that expenditure is well, I guess just not being used. Walk around any of the neighborhoods in the east side or west side in Ward 3, and there's a lot of failing and very unsafe sidewalks. So I'm just wondering, what can we do in order to incentivize homeowners? I mean, certainly that 50/50 program is expensive for somebody who's, on a month-to-month salary. How can we utilize those funds?
I'm sorry, what numbers were you referring to? Because I just want to make sure that they were accurate.
956, the sidewalk construction.
Right, so in fiscal year 25, the expenditure was 48,000.
So if we look at I believe it gets transferred into the sidewalk special fund, is that correct? It's not?
No, no, those are actual expenditures. And we do estimate that we're going to spend around 104,000 in sidewalk for this year. So we are spending those. We do have a bit of participation in the 50/50 program. We actually have work orders lined up that we're not able to fill each year as a part of it because we just run out of season actually. So then we carry them over to the next year for that. So it is a pretty successful program, and we've always replaced about 3 to 4 blocks. So, but that is the limit. We've got about enough season and time to help replace about 3 to 4 blocks of 50/50 sidewalk.
So forgive my ignorance. I'm just trying to figure out how the $25,000 for the 50/50 replacement that's in this line item or the $25,000 goes along with the $25,000 in the sidewalk and curb construction fund. Are those two things related?
They are related, but in a different way. So that is it's a warranted fund, which allows us to pay for construction up front and then apply an 8-year assessment if the property owner wants to do a deferred payment option.
Got it. Okay, so the expenditures of 8,800 of that $25,000 is not accurate in the way that I'm contemplating.
Nope, it is not.
Okay.
Yep.
I always like to point out with that 50/50 fund, it's the way cities set it up across the country, but we don't do that with streets, right? If you have a pothole that needs to be filled in front of your house, we don't do 50/50 with a landowner whose street has a pothole in front of it. And it always frustrates me that we have a system where the property owner is expected to put forth 50% of the funds to repair a sidewalk, which is public property. Unfortunately, it's expensive to move away from that tradition. And as I've asked about in the past, there's also a liability issue if we put ourselves responsible for fixing all the sidewalks that are in bad shape, and rather than saying it's the landowner's responsibility, that it takes on liability issues with the city. So I don't like the situation. I don't like that that's kind of the tradition that cities across the country put ourselves in, but because it's fundamentally not fair compared to the way we do streets, but it is where we are.
Okay. Are there any other questions in gas tax? I believe this will be the last year that we'll see the Barca fund. I think there was some interest that was earned on the money that we had to transfer into the gas tax fund. So I think this was just municipal accounting that we had to do for this year. And then next year, you won't see this Barca fund again. Okay. Moving into special street assessment, really not a lot of changes in the fund. We do have a 7% increase that was adopted as a part of the rate schedule that was incorporated into the revenue estimates this year. We always designate monies for pavement replacement because we identified that as part of the rate schedule process. And then we also designate money for equipment replacement as a part of, and that's how it showed that it's broken up. And then you can see the expenditures, take that into consideration. Moving into our expenditures, somebody have a question? No? Oh, sorry about that. Okay. All right, so moving into expenditures, in special street maintenance, you'll see the other half of the employee for street maintenance coming in. Street maintenance fund is a fund that supports really two divisions in Public Works. It supports our street maintenance crew and our traffic signs and signals crew. So you'll see both of those divisions funding coming out of street maintenance. As we look through, one of the other things that you'll find in all of the funds now, a lot of these line items are kind of duplicate throughout. So our computer equipment, software and supply line item, it really takes into account computer replacements. So we do have a computer replacement schedule, and a lot of that is scheduled out by IT. So when the computers are up for replacement, then it gets put onto the list, and Erica says you got to replace these, and that's we put those costs in there. But it also helps support and pay for our CityWorks, our asset management programs, our other software licensing programs. It all comes out of kind of that line item. So if we have a license program like CityWorks, that when we have an increase, you'll kind of see that increase spread throughout all of the funds because we use CityWorks to support streets, water, sewer. So those increases are applied proportionally throughout all the funds that utilize the CityWorks. And CityWorks this year, we did have to go through an upgrade, because that's one of the reasons for the increase is CityWorks changed to CityWorks. It was like a CityWorks migration. So there is an increase across all the funds to support CityWorks for that. Okay, so gas and oil. If we go to our gas and oil, I know there was a comment earlier that we might not have took into consideration the increase of gas. We actually do. How we typically do it is we look at, there is a U.S. Energy website that really does predict potentially what the increases are going to be for the upcoming year. And as we're pulling the budgets together, we've always utilized that prediction, and we check to see where our fund is now and where we're at and if we need to increase it. And when we looked at it, we just didn't feel, based off of that prediction, that we didn't need to increase. In some of our funds, we just didn't feel that we needed to increase that line item because there was enough in the fund to support it for next year. If we did feel there was an increase, you would see it in here. Now, I actually appreciate council's understanding that there are some things that we can't control, like what's happening outside of the United States. So there may be an increase in gas and oil that we just weren't able to take into consideration, and we may have to do a budget adjustment for that later on. But gas and oil prices ebb and flow all the time, and we try to stay even with that. So we've got our thumb on it all the time. There were times that it was decreased, and there was other times that it has increased also. So we do take consideration when we're setting the budgets and recommending the expenditure line items for that.
Is that prediction, that federal prediction agency, is that Commerce? What department is that?
Of Energy, Department of Energy.
Yeah, of course, Energy, yeah. I'm shocked that they're not predicting.
Well, again, when we were pulling these together, it was a couple months ago. So this is a work in progress, always, right? So we're pulling together budgets
So
back in
we can
January,
update it by
February.
August then.
Huh?
Well, you'll look at it again before August? before the finals?
We can look at it.
I
We
think
will
I'd
always look at
recommend
it
that,
again before, yep.
And then if we do go over, because I mean, we're at $6 for diesel right now, right? So, where does that money come from? Does it come from our reserves, or how
It
do we manage
absolutely will
that?
come from our reserves, and that's one of the reasons why it's really important that we have reserves for the unknowns that we have against the budget.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, if you were to look at line 231, and you look at the actuals in 23, 24, 24, 25, there's a built-in buffer there to a certain extent as well, so.
Yep, yep. And I think that is kind of reflective throughout the budgets. We don't just increase it based off of some reactivary. You know, we do consider the whole year as a part of our budgets too, so. Reactionary, that's what I was trying to say. I got it eventually.
I think even with the whole year, but yeah, it's all predictive.
Let's see, if we go to 362, you'll see that that line item went down. And that was because last year we did program some equipment maintenance for the paver. That was a higher expenditure, but we don't need that this year, so, or for the upcoming year. So you'll see, sometimes that will go up and down just based off of large piece of equipment maintenance items. Street funds, we have the most pieces of equipment in the city are within the street fund. So sometimes those big pieces of equipment just need some large maintenance items that we recognize and we get done outside of their needed season, like the paver.
I'm just going to say real quick while we're on that line. There's a gentleman that lives up in Ward 2. I don't know if you've talked with Bob, or excuse me, Butch. Butch built many of the highways and roads throughout his career, and he's since retired, but he always goes out and he will drive roads that the city has done, and he calls me up just giddy at how amazing our street crews do work. They do exceptional work, so thank you to your street crew.
They do great work. Yep. They take a lot of pride in the product that they deliver, so
Yep.
thanks. Okay. Central garage transfer is always high for streets because they have the most amount of equipment and large equipment and large dollar items. Well, I take it, solid waste is right in there with them, but are there any questions on streets?
Susie, I have sort of two questions. I mean, and this all goes back to a comment that we received about some of the construction off of Second Street and the traffic revisions that are happening because of the construction on Woodland Park.
Right, that's a water transmission.
It's water transmission, sorry. But it's diverting some traffic through a new area through Sullivan Drive and stuff like that. We don't currently have sort of temporary speed bumps in our inventory.
We don't.
Is that something that, because of, and again, I'm just sort of looking at your email, which was really explained that, you know, we have a temporary problem this year, but when we get around to replacing the roundabout over there, it'll be a larger ongoing project. Are those type of speed bumps or things like that, things that be considered in that project?
You know, I think it was a really good trial run for us to close that intersection for about the 3 weeks that it's gonna be closed for this project. Because when we do the roundabout construction, it'll be for much longer. It'll probably be a couple months minimum, closed down. So we'll look at different types of traffic diversions and detours through that area. And we'll look at potentially speed humps through some areas.
And is that construction project in this upcoming fiscal year? Or is
They're gonna bid, I think bids are letting and are opening in June. We'll know, yeah, I think the bids will be opened in June. So there's potential for construction this year, but we think it'll probably happen next year.
Okay. Just noting that, and I know that you're very well aware that this is sort of a nice trial sample of something that's going to be a larger issue. And again, traffic's just being rerouted through neighborhoods that really don't get through traffic, and making sure that we have the supplies, making sure, I know you're probably thinking about those.
We have been, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it's at the top of my list.
But most importantly, thank you for sort of addressing that public comment and just sort of the issues that are happening there, because I do think that that's it. Construction just leads to people finding new routes to go, and we have to think about those things. So thank you again to the
Yeah,
staff
and
and their
you
work
know,
on that.
KPD has spent a lot of time down there, so I think they've done a really good job in supporting us through that construction process too, so that's really been nice.
Thank you.
Be great for communications.
So Susie, would temporary speed humps be something that you would put on the contractor that's awarded the project as part of traffic control, or would that be something the city would need to budget for in the future, I guess?
At this point, it would be a part of the traffic control. As we talked about it, I would like it to be a part of the traffic control of the project, because we want to identify detour routes as we're bringing people through or areas. So the public comment and question was just wanted it in the downtown grid area, but people can choose to go different routes. So even if we put a speed hump, it's just going to push them to a different area because people don't like to drive over speed humps. So I think there's a time and place for speed humps in certain areas. I just think we're going to talk through the best way to help detour traffic around that area for the next project. But Jared, we were thinking about doing it as a part of the contract for traffic control.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so as a part of just kind of going into the capital outlays, as a part of looking at the street fund and the needs of providing same levels of service, when we did the street maintenance rate update, we looked at potential satellite facilities for the street funds to be able to store equipment and materials, and particularly up in the north and west areas of town. So we did put monies in the budget, and it's been, we put them in last year to help us procure property if needed as a part of that. So that's what that property procurement is for. We actually have there's a piece of property off of Stillwater that the state owns that we have asked for first right to be able to purchase it. It's leftover properties from bypass construction, so eventually maybe we'll have the opportunity to purchase that property. So that's kind of what that's slated there for. As I said before, special streets, we kind of have two divisions we support in here. So this is our traffic signs and signals division, funding, and there's really, I don't think there's anything new to really highlight. Other than maybe 428, it kind of shows that the painting materials and our striping materials, those costs are just increasing, along with we want to put more down in the summertime. So that's why that increased. We are going to move forward with building a lean-to structure off of the back of the sand shed. When we built the sand shed several years ago now, we ensured we had the opportunity to build lean-tos off for equipment storage. So just some of the pieces of equipment we have, like down on Sylvan Drive or College Drive, the feedback, those are really expensive pieces of equipment that we have that we just store outside and snow falls on them. We just don't have covered storage, so this just helps us have covered storage for our expensive pieces of equipment. And it just helps promote the longevity of equipment on that. So that's what that's for. And that gets us through streets. Is there any questions on streets or traffic sign signals? Okay, so the Montana Air and Congestion Grant, we call it the Mackey Grant. Every now and then, the state will have an opportunity for us to apply for a Mackey Grant. And typically, the city has to have a match, and that's really for air quality types of equipment like sweepers or water trucks. So we'll try to jump on that when we can, because I think we only have to pay 13.4% of a piece of equipment. That's $500,000. So we really tried to jump on those opportunities. And really, there's nothing in front of us at this second for the Mackey. We applied and we didn't receive it. So it was kind of unfortunate. We thought we were going to get the sweeper paid for, our portion of it paid for, but it didn't happen for us this year. Maybe in the next couple of years. 10 years ago, it used to happen every other year, but it's been a long time since they've been able to put forth a Mackey grant.
Is there any reason to keep the $21,000 in that account, or would it be better utilized, transfer to, I don't know, sidewalks?
Years ago for a match and just hasn't been transferred.
Yeah, it was transferred, as Terry was saying, years ago from a different equipment purchase, and from streets. It just never was transferred back, hoping that maybe we can utilize it for a piece of equipment when they come up again.
Mr. Leffridge, I've spent years looking at these funds, trying to find money to go to sidewalks. And routinely, none of them can be allocated in that way, unfortunately.
Well, that was a bit of an aside, but the $21,000, so the justification for leaving it there is simply if we were to obtain another grant, then that would be part of the matching funds, so we wouldn't have to pull it from somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's typically from the street fund. The match comes from the street or stormwater fund, depending on the piece of equipment.
Okay.
Okay. If nobody has any more questions on streets, we'll move into the 2 Mile Drive Improvement Project. Okay. So we were allocated monies, $3.3 million to be exact, for the 2 Mile Drive Road and Drainage Improvement Project. So we are working our way through that project. We completed all of the HUD grant application process, which was an endeavor. Once we got through all that, we were able to go out for a consultant. So we have procured a consultant, and they're surveying the project right now. So we are well on our way to getting preliminary engineering performed, and then we'll move into design and construction of that project. And that supports drainage improvements, street improvements, and pedestrian access and improvements throughout the corridor. Are there any questions on that? Okay. This is all parks. I'm just gonna do it this way.
Sidewalk and curb construction next.
Sidewalk and curb?
Yes.
Okay. All right, sidewalk and curb construction. You just kind of beat me to it, that's all. Okay. So it's actually, as I explained before, it's kind of a warrant fund that we utilize to be able to support, if a property owner wants to participate in the 50/50 program, we can do a deferred payment option, and it's a 8-year assessment for them. So it's just a mechanism for deferred payments. And we also utilize this fund to help offset the costs for when we have a sidewalk that is unsafe and the city has to take the lead in replacing it because the property owner will not replace it or they refuse to replace it. So we will go in and we will perform the work, and then we do assess the property owner the cost of that process. And sometimes we're able to do the 8-year assessment with them also. So we utilize it that way. Okay. Okay. We're gonna move into the water fund. I believe it's just down.
Councilman Lefferts, I'll send you, I made a note. There's been work sessions and stuff about potential sidewalk construction, sidewalk maintenance, and the creation of an assessment. Ultimately, it costs money, and the council chose not to go that route. There certainly is options, whether it's that route or even SIDs. But, given everything else, the council's just chosen not to go that route. But we have kind of laid out infill construction, new construction, trails maintenance, and what that would look like, a potential funding source, and it just got to the point wasn't a direction the council wanted to head at that time. So maybe we'll send you the link to those meetings so you could watch that and get an idea of kind of potential paths forward.
I appreciate that. I have no doubt that it's been discussed at length before.
If I remember correctly, it was like $12 million in replacement and ads on there, and it was quite a bit. So I think at that time the council was just, we don't have that
Yeah.
kind of money just floating there.
Ultimately, the assessment that there was a range of assessment, but it wasn't a significant amount for the taxpayer. I mean, we were talking
Overall.
Overall, by month, I think it, was $1, a few dollars or something like that. So it was not significant in terms of the impact on the taxpayer. But anyways, you can review that discussion.
It's also part of the reason, like when the airport TIF sunsetted, and the council was pretty unanimous in wanting to move to have sidewalks that went out to Rankin School at that time, just because it was such a significant need and project. So we have jumped on that. You get a lot of sidewalks in that period that really got finished around Legion Field and stuff like that, because yes, Mr. Hunter and others all of us have asked about sidewalks. It is the petrol issue.
Yeah. What does it cost for a homeowner to replace like a sidewalk, say on the east side of Kalispell? When you do that 50/50 program, what is the assessment for the typical homeowner?
I can get that for you. I think it just depends on how much sidewalk needs to be replaced. So the linear footage matters, so I can get you those typical costs.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, you just walk around the east side in particular, and you see the replacement being done in front of high income homes, which is great. And it's very nice to see that replacement, but it certainly seems cost prohibitive for the vast majority of folks. And I think that the equity piece of that is something that I think is important to analyze.
I think it is considerable. I mean, if I remember, it was like 5 figures. Or
All right, I'm done talking about sidewalks.
We've pulled together those numbers before, so we can send that out really easily. I don't know what the bids came in. We just kind of opened up the 50-50 bids, so I'll be able to tell you that. Just have to do some back of the napkin calculations and get that to you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, can everybody see that? Or do I need to zoom in?
A little bigger.
Like that? Is that better?
Bigger again.
One more time? Okay.
There you go.
How about that?
There you go.
Okay, it's better for me too. I was trying to get as much in there as I could. Okay, so our water and sewer funds are our largest funds that we look at because of our large capital projects going forward. So we start off with our beginning cash, our typical revenues coming in. For water, we did break it out into equipment replacement. So we did have monies that were allocated for equipment replacements. We also have a meter replacement fee that we have as a part of our rate structure for that. And you can see what the revenues come in, estimated revenues coming in for those meter replacement fees. We will, kind of on a side note, as we complete the facility plans and bring that in front of council, we'll be going through a rate review and we'll go through rate structure 101 with council. And then we will also be going through and setting financial policies. We'll review what the current financial policies are and what council might want for the next rate structures. Then we will also go through all of our capital projects that we've and we'll know what those capital projects are as we go through the facility plan. So there's kind of this sequence that will bring items in front of council, which then kind of all tie back into the budgets every year as we move forward. So we'll be, by the end of the year, we'll be well-versed on the water and sewer funds moving forward. We do have a bit of bonded debt still in our revenues coming in. And some of those are, as Jared kind of alluded to, they're just our large capital projects that takes 2 or 3 years for us to construct. So we have to show that through municipal accounting. You see that every year until the project is complete and then it goes to zero. So it just takes us several years to build out large capital projects. And that's what you're seeing in there. So obviously our lower zone reservoir 1, that project is completed. But as we're pulling together some of these projects, we're at the punch list stage. So we may or may not have to carry over funds on that because we just have to wait till we close it out and then we can take it off the books. So it just kind of carries over. Our lower zone reservoir 2, that won't be completed till next year. So it's not going to be completed till 2027. So you'll see that in the next budget also being carried over, along with the emerging contaminant response project that won't be completed till 2028. So we're going to see that for the next several years on there. Also, for the lead inventory replacement one, it's going to probably take us till 2028 too. So actually, I hope maybe we'll get it done by 27. We're going to try. So maybe that one will be zero by the next time, but it's kind of been a slow process. It's a kind of a challenging project for us, but so those are our revenues coming in. Expenditures, we'll go over expenditures on everything in the upcoming in the next pages, and then our ending cash. When we look at the water fund and the ending cash, the fund is healthy. And I think as we go into the rate review structure, we'll be able to afford moving forward with some capital projects without having to bond for some of them. So I think that's probably a good sign for everybody. But we'll work on those. I say that, but some of the capital projects are just expensive. So, even though we might have $13 million in our ending cash, just to do a large transmission main is 10. So it's kind of, these are big funds, but they also have big capital projects with them. Okay, so as we move into the water fund, this is just the summary because there's just a lot of things that are happening in the water fund. This is just a page that summarizes everything. I'm gonna gloss over that and we're gonna go right into the expenditures. So you'll see our salaries, and that really just reflects the increases in the salaries from year to year on there. And then we're going into the M&O line items, highlighting anything extraordinary. Really nothing out of the ordinary that pops out. You'll see the electricity line item. We did increase the electricity line item. What we did is we took into account from Flathead Electric a 6% increase plus 1% for growth is how we, more water we produce, more energy we use. So we did about a 1%. So a total of 7% increase on electricity estimated in this upcoming year. Let's see.
So I have a question there about the facility plan 357.
Yes.
So this is the one you were referring to where you have federal grant to cover this in the sewer as well? Yeah. That's good to hear. I think we talked about this maybe previous year, but it's just sticker shock looking at for a consultant report, $500,000 on water and then another $500,000 for sewer. So we're looking at $1 million to do these studies.
Yep.
And that is typical for these types of studies. Like that was the low bid on doing these.
So for consultant services, it's based off of qualifications. You can't use low bid. You have to use qualifications. So it was based off of qualifications for consultants submitting on the proposal.
But $500,000 for a plan like this is not unusual.
It is not unusual.
That's incredible.
That coincides with land use plans. You talk down, when a city contracts those out, so they've always been done in-house, but I believe Missoula was over $1 million for Malupa on top of the staff. So, yeah, it's crazy. The contract services to develop these is a huge part of the budget.
And this is one, I understand that this is quite a complex one, facility plan and impact fees and stuff. That's just not something we have the capacity to do in-house.
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, and especially if we
don't
have a federal.
the capacity to do it in-house.
Yeah.
And you'll see as you get the facility plan, just the technical details and, well, hey. Just so you know. He says, no. So we're carrying over 100,000 for the facility planning, but then the other part is for the rate study and the impact fee study. So they kind of do add on to each other as a part of it. So, yep. But I think even as we bring it forward, the plans themselves are invaluable. The staff uses them on a daily basis as we have new development come in and we're reviewing what the size of our mains need to be, where they need to go, and how we need to support new development and growth. We have utilized those plans. They are our roadmap that we go to as these new developments are coming in. So, and we know when we need to build a new tank, when we need to build a transmission main, when we need new wells. So it's actually, they're very good plans for us to have. And we'll go through all that, hopefully in June. I think we're gonna have the drafts ready to be able to review in June, and it'll be pretty extensive. I also think it was really nice to know that we did get some grant funding for it. So we might not be spending that much on the facility plans if we get reimbursed through that grant process.
So the federal grant's not necessarily covering all of it.
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
Okay.
There was a match to that too, if I'm correct, on some of that. And so we do have to pay for some of that. Yep.
Okay.
And that was really just for the facility plan. It wasn't for the rate study and impact fee study part of it. Okay, is there any other questions on that? Let's go to. Anything else on M&O?
We increased our hydrant costs to
Oh.
10,000, but we've seen large increase there.
Yeah, and again, we do explain the hydrants costs have gone up quite a bit, so we did increase that line item. Our hydrants get hit a lot. It just is, but they do. We're replacing hydrants because they are hit, and a lot of them are hit and runs, and so we just have to get them replaced. So I think they're $3,500 a piece now to just buy the hydrants. So
And there's no insurance on that, right?
sometimes we are able to recoup if we can figure out who hit the hydrant. So we try our hardest to get reimbursed through insurance when somebody does hit the hydrants, but not always do we capture who hits the hydrants.
Is there, with there being cost saving if they are hit so much and always allocating funding in like future new developments, having like bollards or something around it so that if there is crashing, you're not
I
taking out
think
a-
that would add a large additional cost that then
Large.
after they hit the bollard and the hydrant, we'd have to
They
replace
take out the
bollard
bollard.
and the hydrant.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that, I can see where you're, yeah, to help protect them. And in some areas that they've been hit several times, we have put some things in there. But I also think there's some liability to that we've put in extra structures in areas. So you always have to consider the, benefits as a part of some of that.
Right.
So if we know which ones are being hit more frequently, would a camera help?
Potentially, but I don't actually think we can put cameras in the right of way, so.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that with license plate recognition. No, I'm kidding. You're going down another
I
path
am
here.
in Pandora's box
cameras
again.
and
I'm
stuff,
sorry.
so,
Okay.
yeah.
Seems to be something I'm good at. Okay, thanks.
I don't have a bad heart yet, but you guys are pushing it.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're moving into capital projects. Okay, so kind of like a broken record, a lot of our projects, it takes us several years once we actually get the budget approved. Even for capital projects that are designed by in-house staff, projects don't get approved till August. So then we have a pretty short window to do survey design, bid, and then bring them into construction. So sometimes it takes us a year or a year and a half to actually bring the project full circle. So we carry projects from year to year until they're complete. So you'll see a lot of capital projects when they say carry. It's just because we're in the process of design, bid, build components of that. So, I don't really plan on talking about any of the carryover projects because we did go through all those last year. Unless you have questions on any of them, then I can speak to any one of the capital projects. We do have new equipment. So 940 is our machinery and equipment line item. So we have equipment that we have ordered. They just hasn't been delivered yet. And then we have new pieces of equipment scheduled for replacement and new in this year's budget as a part of that. Let's see. For our SCADA system update and improvements line item, that's 951. So we usually have an annual appropriations, and that's for when we need support from consultants to do programming for our SCADA system, or we have a software update that is scheduled and we need to put monies for those software updates. In last year's budget, we needed to purchase and do programming for the Buffalo Hill SCADA computer, which is our main computer for our water system, and we're just still finishing that out. It's not quite complete, so as soon as we get that done. And that was a pretty good lift for us for that replacement. You'll see in the wastewater treatment plant fund, we are replacing a computer, and there's a pretty big cost with that computer replacement too. So, so that's what those costs are. Grandview Well, Cary, lead service line. We had to put monies in the project, and it's carryover. We had to put monies in the capital projects for the meter pits. The funding would not pay for the meter pits, so we had to bring that out of rates. So we paid for the meter pits out of the rates. Covered equipment storage, again, it's just moving into the second phase where we're going to build and improve some covered equipment storage for the water crews. A new project on Claremont, rehab and replacement projects on Claremont Street. And really that project is in coordination with a street rehab project. So the street through there really needed to be milled and overlaid, and we also had a water main project in there, so we kind of always try to combine the two when we can. So that's Claremont Street, and that's up by the hospital, if you're wondering. Another one is Second Avenue West from 10th to 12th, so that's a main replacement. You'll see we do have rates funding to support Reservoir 2 and 1. Replacements. We are working on West Well number 1, and there is potential for us to procure water rights and a well up near the Empire State, so we are working on the process for that. 6th Street West, we have bid that and awarded it, actually. So we'll be doing that construction this summer. Same with 10th also. So those are our capital projects for the upcoming year. Any questions? And we kind of already talked about the bonded projects, but I'd be happy to elaborate if anybody has questions on it, on any of those. I think just for an update for the lead service line replacements, we're actually doing that hopefully will be completed in 3 phases. We bid and awarded the first phase. We're working on design for the second phase, and then we'll finish up the rest of them in the 3rd phase. And that's all funded money, a 60-40. 60% of it is forgiven, 40% of it is coming from rates.
And that program is not affected. I saw just the other day news from federal government that they are going back off their requirements on the lead replacement requirements. I assume the funding is already allocated. We don't have to worry about any changes there coming from the feds.
I haven't heard that they would be pulling back any funding assistance on that project. And we just recently had a meeting with the funding staff. So I have not heard anything like that.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, any questions on any of that? As a part of our water and sewer operations, we do support the water billing. So we kind of do have the water billing, utility billings are a component of our water and sewer funds. And you'll see within the water and sewer funds, the utility billing, their funds as a part of it. So it supports staff and all of their M&O. And it's typically, and Carrie can correct me if I'm wrong, it's typically split 50-50 between the water and sewer portions of it. In this fiscal year, there is an additional full-time employee to support utility billing, and that was a component as we did the rate increase for water fund. It was a scheduled employee to be added as the city grows and we add new, as we add new residents, new service lines. We anticipated the need for another full-time employee to support utility billing. And that really completes the water fund. Any questions? If not, I'm gonna scroll right on down into impact fees. Impact fees, no big changes with the impact fees. You can see our estimated revenues coming in, our actuals, maybe 480,000 actuals for water impact fees this year. For fiscal year 26. And then potentially for next year, it's estimated at 450. So we go into expenditures. We always, as a part of this fund, we participate in contract main upsizes, and that is when new development is going through areas and their subdivision, let's say their subdivision requires them to extend an 8-inch, but our facility plan says it needs to be a 12-inch to promote growth down the line. So then we pay for that difference between a 12 and an 8-inch, and that's what these contract main upsizes supports. And it's been a fantastic program for us because we've been able to capitalize on a lot of extensions throughout the city as we grow, and we don't have to go back and increase the main sizes. And we know that, and we know what the size needs to be because of our facility planning. So so it kind of comes all full circle. You'll see in our budgets. We also, as a part of the water impact fees, we pay for new meters out of the impact fees. So all new meters comes out of there. And then we pay for debt service projects associated with growth-related projects. So that gets transferred from the impact fees into the water funds. Any questions on impact fees? Pretty straightforward, really nothing changing from previous years. Okay. Sewer. Sorry, I gotta get a drink. It's a lot of talking. Almost had a drink. Okay. When we look at our sewer fund, we look at the first page, which is again our normal first page, beginning cash, revenues, expenditures, ending cash. This first page takes into consideration both sewer collection and wastewater treatment plant, and then we'll break it out, and you'll see how they're divided up for operation and maintenance and capital projects. But this first page reflects the sewer fund as a whole when we're looking at it. So within this fund, our revenues coming in, we do have some anticipated debt, bonded debt coming in this year, and I'll explain that project in a second. And then expenditures and operating and ending cash. In looking at and comparing our financial policies in fiscal year 27, we're checking the box on all those. We're meeting all those. I will put a caveat as we move into rate development and facility plan. We'll be looking at some pretty technical, and we'll be needing to make some pretty hard decisions, to be frank, on what capital projects we want to move forward with, specifically with the wastewater treatment plant. So it's going to be some late night conversations on wastewater treatment plant process, but nonetheless. Okay, so moving into sewer operations, so this is a sewer collection fund portion of it, our sewer collection division, if you will. Not a lot of changes in this fund.
I have a question about 344, the natural gas. I think I read in the narrative that we have several lift stations that are powered by natural gas.
Yep. So we have, and that's for our generators, right?
Oh,
So we have a base fee, so we have generation, our generators. So, and they use natural gas, and we anticipate a 10% base fee increase. Well, actually, it's already being applied right now.
In January, they had a 10.5% base rate increase, and we have 40 lift station accounts, so 10.5 on the monthly base hit this fund the hardest.
So
Is that because the generator just for, power outage risk and?
absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yep. And when we do have power outages, it's important that we lift that because the wet wells are only sized to a certain capacity, so we don't want them overflowing. So we need to have the stations be in power. But during the month, when we do have power, we do they do run like every week to make sure that they operate correctly. So we do use them a little bit every week, because we got to test them and make sure they're going to operate for when we're out of power.
Hey, Susie.
Yes, sir.
How did we do with the couple days this year? We had big power outages for a long period of time. How did those generators test out, and where did we identify where we are lacking some?
Actually, as far as the collection system, the lift stations, we fared really well. Where we didn't fare as well is the wastewater treatment plant process. We only have one generator, and it only supports certain processes of the treatment process. So we did not fare as well with the wastewater treatment plant. And that's actually, as we move into the facility plan, that's one of the capital projects that's recommended is to have additional backup generators for other parts of the wastewater treatment plant.
And how long did it take for that day that it was out for like 14 hours or whatever? How long did it take to get back to catch up to normal operations? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think we were out of power for over 8 hours down at the treatment plant. And at that point, we don't have any blowers, so we were unable to produce air. So we did end up violating for BOD and TSS, I believe, on that instance, which is actually the first time we've ever violated based off of a power outage. Typically, we can handle a power outage for like 4 hours, and usually we're back on in about 4 hours. That one was just extraordinarily longer than anything that I've ever had to deal with. So it would have been nice to have that second generator to be able to power the blowers, but once we get power back on, it really doesn't take us too long to transition back into treatment. So a couple hours. But the damage is already done, really, so.
Yeah, I understand that. And I was reading or doing some research on like the power grid here, and there's no major improvements scheduled to happen to it for the foreseeable future. So we can probably expect that to happen again if we continue to have these high wind events.
Yeah, I think it'd be really prudent of us to invest in some additional backup generation. To be honest with you, we just haven't had it happen. Typically we're able to work through it when they've been up to 4 hours. It was this 8-hour stint that really got us this last time, so.
And it's a bit off topic. You may recall a couple months ago, the council authorized staff to submit that Montana Resiliency Grant, and we were notified on Friday that we were awarded it, and that was about 300,000 for the public safety building. Fortunately, that particular program, that wasn't gonna be enough money for the wastewater treatment plant, because we did look at that as well, but it is a step in the right directions. We'll be talking about that on Wednesday. So.
Good.
Okay. So, so line item, 425, we did add $20,000, to install 4 new wet well mixers. Wet well mixers go into the they're lift station wet wells, and it helps with the pumping and with the odor process. So we've been every year trying to add ones in our larger lift stations to help with, to make sure that they're not clogging and with the odor parts of them. So it's a really good investment. So we just kind of been ticking away at the bigger lift stations to help with that. Anything else on those? Good. Okay, our capital projects for our collection system. We have carryover projects that we're continuing to work on. So that'd be the Second Alley West, Wedgewood, Third Alley East improvement. That's a new capital project that we will start working on once budget is approved. The sewer storm shop roof replacement. That one was actually bid, and the award recommendation will be in front of council on Monday. So we're just kind of working through all these. Second Alley West improvements is actually just downstream of the other project, so just phase 2 of replacing that sewer main. We have just SCADA annual controls. Our SCADA system for our lift stations is mission communications, and every now and then they have an update that we're mandated to fix. We don't really have a choice, so it's money's there for when they decide to update something, and we have to pay for it. And sometimes we don't know until it's the middle of the budget. It's just the process of communication software. So we only spend it if we need it, but we got caught one year where they did an update and we didn't know about it and we didn't have the money. So we put money in there for the just in case. Just in case. Process. Our manhole rehab and repairs. We have money allocated in the budget. We have older infrastructure in the downtown areas, and sometimes unknowns pop up. We have cavities develop where we have to replace a manhole or sections of a main. And in some of our mains in the downtown areas are in locations that we can't do it internally, so we have to contract it out. And when we start to move through some of that, it becomes a little costly, so we put it as a capital project in there. So that's what those are for. We are continuing to work on lift station 36 improvements. And then we are actually almost complete with the sewer main slip lining project is probably at 85% complete. So we're almost done with that project. I guess, does anybody have any questions on the capital projects? Okay. So this is the other part of the utility billing. So I don't really need to go over it. It mirrors exactly what the water utility billing is. And then we move into the wastewater treatment plant. Not a lot of changes in the wastewater treatment plant fund.
I had a question about, from the narrative, that the carryover will only be 36%, but we need at least 55% for confidence of coverage. Did I read that right?
Could you tell me which one you're talking about?
For this, is this, oh, I'm sorry, is this solid waste or is this?
Oh, this is for
Wastewater,
wastewater
okay,
treatment plant.
sorry, solid waste.
Oh, all right. Jumping ahead. Okay. Yeah, so as far as maintenance and operations, kind of as I alluded to earlier, in the office supply, equipment, and computers, we are going to replace one of the computers at the wastewater treatment plant. And it's a significant cost for that. It costs us $40,000 to replace the hardware, the SCADA, and perform the programming part of it. So it's a pretty big investment for us to be able to, when we have to replace the main computers for the water and wastewater systems. We are going to try as a part of this to consolidate, because there's actually 3 computers down there. So we're going to try to consolidate that into 2. So we only have to replace 2 and if they come in. So we're going to look at some of that and see what we can do to make that a little bit function for what we need, make sure we have that backup, but maybe not as costly in the future to replace. So we'll be working through some of that this year. Our alum line item went down due to the construction of the fermenter. We did have an increase in electricity. We kind of mirrored what we did in the operations. We did a 7% increase. We know we're going to have a 6% increase plus 1% for growth, and that's really just more flow into the wastewater treatment plant. Let's see, 354 and 355. We just did a little bit of cleanup and tried to make it a little bit more transparent because we won't be disposing of our biosolids at Glacier Gold in the future. We just made contract services biosolids disposal into one line item, and we put all that cost into that one line item. So that's really, we were just kind of cleaning up some of that. In previous budgets, or even the ones we're in, we broke it out to landfill, and then we had another line item for Glacier Gold. Well, we just consolidated those. So that's what that is. So any other than that, it was pretty much the same light items and expenditures. Any questions on treatment plant? Okay. So capital projects for the wastewater treatment plant. For this year's budget, I did carry over some capital projects that we may not move forward with, just dependent on our discussions with council, with the facility plan, and the upcoming rate structure. We believe that DEQ, they are in the process of reviewing the TMDL, and once they have reviewed and completed the TMDL, we will move into permitting. And they have set a goal to provide a draft TMDL to EPA by this fall. So our permit numbers will be based off the load allocations from the TMDL, so we anticipate that coming up. So we might have direction on where we need to what future capital projects we might have to implement to meet our permit requirements. So that's going to be coming in the future. You'll see in our facility plan, we actually are going to outline 3 different scenarios. One will be, we can stay status quo based off of permit regulations. One is we have to meet the highest achievable conditions, which is another kind of a whole nother step of treatment process. And then one is going to RO, which is a whole nother treatment process. So depending on which way that we are going to decide to go in the future will really dictate what projects we need to do at the wastewater treatment plant. The installation of the secondary clarifier covers is really important to our process if we stay status quo, because at this point we are building algae in our clarifiers, and that's getting into our sand filters. So we need to cover them to minimize the algae growth on the secondaries, and that's why it's been in there. However, if our regulatory requirements tell us we have to go to the next step of treatment, a little bit more stringent treatment levels, we're probably going to have to go into membrane treatment. And if we do membrane treatment, we don't need secondary clarifiers. So I don't really want to spend the money to put covers on secondary clarifiers if we're not going to be using them in 5 years. So those are kind of the conundrums that I'm in, and sometimes as we lay out these capital projects, until I get that regulatory, this is what your permit limits are going to be, then we'll be able to really set a plan out on how we need to achieve those regulatory requirements. I did leave it in the budget as a carryover, just for the, once we know what we're going to be permitted at, we can move forward with the projects. I know that was a really long explanation. We'll go through it more in depth during the facility plan discussions. I have some actually really good graphics and really good guidelines for each one of our different scenarios as we move forward. We are going to move forward, and it's a carryover for our new Influence screens. So we're just working on that project right now. We are in the middle of improving our dewatering system. So we anticipate that we are going to be able to utilize our dewatering system by the end of June and July, and we'll be able to fine-tune our process before we transfer 100% to the landfill. And we are still, our goal is to meet the 18% requirement that the county has set on us. So I'll know more once we get the process up and going, and we'll be able to report back whether we can do that or not. So we're still working through that. Some of our new projects that we are bringing in are the bioreactor gate and valve improvements. And that's just replacement of I have a list of how many they are. There's a lot of them. Our plant is showing its age. It was built in 1990, and the gates and the valves are starting to corrode and malfunction, and we just have to take the time and invest to replacement, and that's what that project is. So, how many? 10 valves and 77 gates through all of our bioreactors. So it's a big project. It kind of sounds minor, but it's a really big project to get done. But it's definitely needed. If we can't open and close the gates and the valves, then we can't operate our process efficiently. So it's time for us to invest in the treatment plant that way. Same with the mixer motors and gearbox replacement. We just need to replace the motors. They're starting to malfunction, and we just need to take that step and replace them. So those are our new kind of capital projects coming in for this year. Our equipment replacement, our equipment maintenance line item is just our typical line items that we allocate monies, so which allows us to replace motors, components, piping as they fail, just kind of unknown sometimes throughout the year as they malfunction. Then we have the funding to replace, and then machinery and equipment that we have specific line items. We kind of always in that one, we always specify really what those projects are. And in this year, we have a couple carryovers that we're still working on. Most of them have been procured, we're just waiting for delivery. Takes a while for us to get some of the components when we're doing these larger projects. The new projects that we're gonna do in the upcoming fiscal year is the bioreactor scum trough replacement. And then we're gonna try to improve our aeration blower control panels so we can fine tune the air in the bioreactors a little bit better. So those projects. Does anybody have any questions on the wastewater treatment plant capital? No, okay. Within the wastewater treatment plant, we do have lab. We broke it out and we have lab services. So this is just the lab service funding. There really is no changes. The increase 349 is really that one. Is that one we have? Yeah. Because we're gonna deliver biosolids at the landfill, they did require us to do some additional sampling, so it's reflected in that line item for that. For that. And I believe that's it. Oh, we got impact fees. Is there any questions on the wastewater treatment plant? Nope. All right, going into impact fees. So sewer impact fees, we do break it up into collections and wastewater treatment plant. So we have two of them in sewer, if you will. So you'll see it broken out. So collection and then treatment. So it's broken out in that way, and then it's treated 100% broken out as projects come in and out. The expenditures for collection, again, we do participate in upsizing, and that's for new development, just as I explained for the water system. And then we also are participating in the Lift Station 36 improvement, which is for new development coming in. And that Lift Station 36 services the north section of the city of Kalispell, kind of everything north of the Stillwater River. There's a big lift station. It's a big regional lift station through there. So, and then in the treatment plant, you'll see our capital project. We need to rehab and add additional clarification and EQ basin project. So a portion of that is growth related, so we're using impact fees to pay for a portion of that. And then treatment, the biosolids dewatering was also for growth, so a portion of impact fees is paying for that project. And then we do have a transfer for debt of $650,000, and that is for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade that was performed in 2009. Is that what that one is for?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's $1 million.
Yep.
And it's the last year.
And it is actually the last year for that bond. So, yeah, that's actually really nice. Okay. Woo. We are through sewer. On to storm. I know, it gets to be a lot. I'm sorry. Stop me if you have questions. Okay, our storm fund. Let's see. Our storm fund, the last time we went through storm assessments was back in, I don't have it. When did we do that last?
The last increase was in 22, so it was 5 years prior to that.
Yeah, so I think 2017 is when we really went through a rate review for the stormwater fund, and the last increase was in 2022 as a part of that reflection. And at that time, we designated funds for equipment replacement and for capital projects. So as we get down to our ending cash, you're gonna see that our ending cash is actually getting down, lower than it normally has been. And a lot of that has to do with the capital project costs that we're seeing. So, kind of as we went through the facility plan, I did note that we will look at the the stormwater assessment when we're doing the impact fee review. So we have to do an stormwater impact fee review, and I'll do a stormwater assessment review at the same time, and we'll get that in front of council to review kind of what we're currently bringing in and what capital projects we can support as a part of our assessments. Just as I reflected back and looked at how we set, a lot of our capital projects, we estimated at that time in 2017, they were like $200,000 and $250,000, but that's not the cost of capital projects anymore.
No, they're 2 million.
Yeah. Instead, they're, a couple $1 million to do a project. So we're just not able to do the capital projects that we intended to back in 2017. So it's time for us to take a look at it and review what those are. I believe when we were looking at stormwater, as we were talking through that discussions, we wanted the assessments to last for 10 years, and they really have. So we are at the point where we need to review them again. So, I actually think it's really just a factor of time. It's time to look at it again. Okay, so salary, as we're going through there, just the typical salary increases, M&O. You'll see in the M&O, the increase with that has to do with a jet nozzle. We needed to purchase a jet nozzle for cleaning larger pipes. And we split that. Oh, that's also in storm. So so the other portion of that cost is in the sewer fund. Oh, and that's line 218. Apologies. That's that 9,400. It did go up for the jet nozzle purchase part of it.
We reduced 358 by 155,000.
Yep. So you'll see 358 got reduced because we completed the facility plan. And now we really just have monies in there to support the impact fee study.
Actually went down 163,000.
So not a lot of other changes. Any questions on storm? Okay.
Yeah, pay for that lease and then I'll purchase that property.
Okay, so a couple capital machinery and equipments in this year's storm budget. We do need to purchase a new sweeper. And the new sweeper, the cost of a sweeper is split between the stormwater and the street fund. It services both funds as a part of. For stormwater, it helps us support the MS4 permit requirements by keeping the streets clean and removing the dirt. And it also is a part of the street fund for keeping the streets clean. So we split the sweeper costs in there. Our Grandview, our main project moving forward is the Grandview Rehab and Repair Project. And that's to help improve the drainage that is coming off of Highway 93 onto Grandview and from the highway and from the subdivisions that are just to the south of Grandview. So it's a pretty big capital project. And so that's why the fund, you can see it start to dive down. It's just capital costs are a little bit more than, well, they're significantly more than what we anticipated back in 2017. Otherwise, there are carryover projects.
Third Ave East Center is a new one.
Capital project in 959 is your 3rd Avenue East from Center to 6th. There is a portions of stormwater improvements through there, specifically from 4th to 6th, that we are going to be paying for out of the stormwater fund to help support those drainage. One of the things we look at is we a lot of times as we're doing a street reconstruction or a street, even just a mill and overlay, sometimes we will combine that with a stormwater project, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense for us to do a mill and overlay and put new pavement down and there's still ponding that's occurring. So we try to improve the guttering system. Sometimes it's just as simple as installing a manhole, a catch basin, and a pipe to an existing storm sewer system. So we'll kind of try to combine those so we have a good project in the end, and we don't have throwaway money by putting new asphalt down and then in 5 years it's going to break up because you have a ponding issue. So I try to really coordinate capital projects in that way. And that's what you're seeing here on this 3rd Avenue East portion of it. Okay. The other piece of equipment that we're going to purchase this year is a vac truck. We do need to replace one of our vac trucks. It's probably our highest priority piece of equipment in the storm and sewer. It's also in the sewer fund. It's a replacement of the vac truck, so it's what we utilize to maintain all of our storm and sewer drainage systems. So that is in this year's budget. And that completes stormwater. Then we move into stormwater impact fees. So really, the revenues coming in for stormwater impact fees is about 250,000. It looks like maybe this year actuals might be 305,000, so that's more than what we previously got. Anyways, our expenditures out of impact fees are, again, we support facilities upsizing for conveyance systems, and we do have a debt payment on the regional stormwater facility that is up in section 35 or in the Starling area of town. Questions? We'll be going through stormwater impact fees. We'll bring that in front of council once we get it through the impact fee committee. So we'll be going through all that also this year. Okay, moving into the solid waste.
I think this is where I had my question there in the narrative. About
Okay.
the carryover being only 36%, but saying we needed 55%. If you go up a page, I think is where I saw it. Yeah, here. Cash carry of 55 to 75% has been sufficient, but then we are expecting estimated to have 36%. Am I reading that right?
The beginning cash. So I'm sorry, Your Honor, Amy writes these, so this portion is Amy's.
Okay. Yeah, that's just a little, maybe I'm reading it wrong in some way, but what I'm reading is that we need 55% and we're at 36, so we're not meeting the requirement, but I may be reading it wrong, but that's kind of what I read.
Beginning cash operating carry.
So anyways, yeah, we can follow up on it.
I think it's just saying, it's actually just stating what is. So the beginning the beginning operating cash carryover was 71% for 26, and then, and is estimated to be 36% for 27. It's just, it's just stating what the fund is.
Right. But two sentences before.
But the sentence before, she's saying it should be 55 to 75% of budgeted expenditures.
So it was great last year, we were at 71%, but then this year we take a big slide down to 36%, and we're saying we need 55 at minimum.
We will take a look at that and give you a response to, on
All
that.
right,
Yep.
thank you.
Just getting to my pages. Okay,
Okay, just a typo then.
so
Maybe it was 63.
So the, again, carryover, new revenues coming in, total expenditures from rates, capital, and then our operating ending cash. In reviewing our financial policies, we are hitting our target levels for our ending operating reserves, so we are meeting our financial policies as we set when we, adopted the master plan and the rate process.
So I think that percentage is just wrong. We'll take a look, because if you look at the operating beginning cash at 1.3, it's just slightly below last year, so it might be 63% rather than, I think the numbers are just swapped.
I'll double check.
Good catch, thank you. Okay, going into our expenditures, nothing really, no real changes, in this fiscal year. We are following our master plan implementation schedule, and that reflects in the budgets as far as, M&O is concerned. Really, we did increase gas and oil based off of growth, knowing that we are servicing new subdivisions as they're coming in, so we are just driving more, so we did account for additional routing, in that aspect. Our contract services, and consultant, that's to support the design of the facility for equipment storage. Again, and that's pretty much the highlights of this year for M&O. If we go into capital, it really just focuses on the new facility for equipment storage. And we are purchasing a new sidearm, and it's a scheduled replacement. And it was a scheduled replacement that is a component in the rate structure. In the upcoming years, our solid waste master planning, it does allocate funding to purchase a new sidearm to support growth as we need it. And as we went through the service numbers, we don't anticipate we're gonna need a new sidearm to support that growth, probably till 28. Just you know, as the trend line of new services coming in, so. But the rate structure did allocate funding for a new sidearm to support growth, but really, I'm not gonna put it in the budget until we absolutely need it. That's solid waste. Does anybody have any questions on solid waste? Okay. Central Garage is an internal transfer fund. And really what we focus on is the expenditure details. No change in really the expenditures for salaries, that's all consistent. The increase to the computer line item, that has to do with the cost of the new fleet management software and the CityWorks, and a scan tool annual renewal fee. So that incorporated those costs. The, in line item 229, the additional cost there supports the purchase of a spring pin bushing tool. We currently don't have one at this point, and the way they're removing it, we just need to purchase the tool to help them remove the spring pin bushings. So that's what's in this line item, and that's $3,500 for that. We did do an increase in the motor vehicle parts, and really we based that estimate and increased on actuals from the year before and cost increases that we've seen throughout the year. So it's really just to help us keep on top of the cost for those parts for the repairs. Tires, every year we have the shop supervisor review the tire requests from all the departments, and then we know which tires we need to replace in this upcoming year. So then we get the cost for that, and that's what you see that reflected in this line item. Contract service repairs, just the cost when we do have to bring a piece of equipment out for contract services, the costs just seem to be going up. And we try our hardest to perform all of the maintenance and repairs in-house, but there's some equipment that we don't have the tools to replace or perform on them. Some of it is like our paver, and some of it is just proprietary software with the piece of equipment. So there are certain manufacturers that have proprietary requirements that kind of require us to bring them in when certain things are malfunctioning on our bigger pieces of equipment. So that's what this is for. That's it. I mean, we didn't, it's pretty straightforward, M&O for Central Garage this year. Not a lot of additionals on there. Oh, I forgot, yeah. And we can talk about hybrid and electric vehicles if you want to, or we can keep that to a work session someday if that.
I'd welcome a work session one day.
Okay, a work session one day. So we do have experience with it, and we bring experience to the table as to why or why not maybe the city should go into having hybrids or electric vehicles. So we have some experience in that, and it is quite difficult to perform the mechanical services on it because they are electric vehicles, and you have to have the training and the tools and the expertise to perform maintenance on electric vehicles. And it just takes a bit of time to develop that and to be able to service them. Our experience with bringing them to outsource for services, we were out of vehicles for months to years, or a year on some of the PD vehicles that were hybrid. So it just, the customer service, so there was no quick turnaround time on some of the, so we had several KPD cars that were hybrid, and they just didn't get serviced. And they just were at the dealership for many, many months, just not getting repaired, so.
And was I incorrect in that it was not the gas side of the vehicle, it was the electric side?
As far as what needed repaired, I don't know. Do you know?
You speak. So most of our issues up there were with the transmissions and then the electronic components for that switching on them. Some of that was parts, some of it was in the motors, because of the design of the motor to fit the electric stuff. It was just a lot of issues the issues with the electrical system, the cooling system and heating system for the batteries. So there's a lot of issues. I think they have their place, but really for an emergency vehicle, it just, because they have to get up and go, they just didn't really, they weren't meant for, I think, that kind of, they had just issues that, some of it's new out there, but yeah, a lot of it was the transmission, the cooling systems, and that electrical systems, and the amperage on those things will kill you. So it's just, you got to have the expertise, and outsourcing those, even Ford didn't have a lot of the great training on it. So we seen them down up to, 7 months on some of those transmissions. I think we replaced 3 of them in one car in 2 years. So just a lot of those issues.
Didn't have a great experience with it, but that's not to say that maybe in a different application, it might serve a purpose, but just definitely not for KPD cars.
What I found with owning a hybrid, plug-in hybrid myself, is that because the expense of manufacturing the electric side of it, the car companies go cheap on the other components of the car. So it's not that the electric component is failing necessarily, it's
Gotcha, so that's your own experience, I
yeah.
gotcha, yeah.
And so if you went all electric, you actually may not run into the maintenance problem because you wouldn't have kind of the other components that are necessarily put in cheaper to try to bring down cost for the hybrids, but anyways, yeah.
Certainly a route, if it's a route council wants to take, like I said, it would just be a matter of kind of like the capital planning, facility planning. It would be to do it right, I think you'd want to transition into it slowly over time and kind of plan for it, because it would have to be built into your central garage, into your fleet. Some fleet it may make sense, some it doesn't, I think overall, most of our fleet, I mean, we don't have a huge fleet per se, but some of it may make sense and some of it won't, so you just want to have some strategy going into it, how you would go about it.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk as well, just having to manage the HEO program at the college. We're running the same thing with the proprietary. It's insane how much it is, and we have to bring it in.
Yeah.
So maybe we can figure something out.
That was it for tonight. That is a majority of the budget, but yeah, on Wednesday, got police and fire, IT, but working through that, it is, talked a bit about it. In one sense, it was easy to do the budget because we've done the planning and we could kind of just plug it in the capital projects, but as Susie alluded to, we've got a lot of plans coming up, storm, water, sewer with associated impact fees, so those obviously will impact future budgets as well, and that's, once we get into our next year here into the fall, we'll be transitioning into all that as well. So that's all we got for tonight.
Great. I will open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the council who, Walter, you stuck it out, man. Good job.
There you go.
So, Walter Roundtree, 22 Fifth Avenue East. I have 2 shorts and a long, but I apologize, this meeting went longer than I had planned. So I'm just gonna knock down the 2 shorts and leave the long for some other time. So first of all, just a reminder to some of the council members, don't go tilting at liberal windmills. Problem with the previous council is they tilted at conservative windmills. Let's not forget that lesson. Okay, secondly, I want to talk about the parking. Any solution that you have has to take into account that maybe the people who have to get out and move their cars every 2 hours, to them, that's not necessarily a bug, that's a feature. Who doesn't want to be able to give that palm to their boss and say, I got to go move my car. Maybe the car only moves 10 feet, but they get to scroll for a few minutes. So any solution has to take into account that it either needs to incentivize them more than that 2-hour break every 2 hours, or it has to give them some kind of stick that's worse than that carrot. Okay, so that's the two shorts, but since I have a few more minutes, I'd like to talk about the solid waste numbers that you noticed, Ryan. The expense went from 2.5 million to 5 million. That's double. So of course the percent of carryover is going to go from 71% to 36. That's almost exactly half. So the dollar amount of the carryover is exactly the same, even though the percent has changed dramatically. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone online? No? Okay, city manager report.
I think tonight was enough. See you on Wednesday.
Right, council reports.
Nothing, I'm fighting migraines. What do you get?
Ooh, oofta. I've got nothing.
Pass.
I've always said these chairs are fine till tonight.
Mr. Dowd, anything?
Yeah, Jed, get out of my chair, number one. And number two, I have spent my adult life tilting at windmills, so I do resonate with your public comment that you just gave, so thank you. Yeah, thanks for everybody for sticking this out. These are the most important 2 meetings we have all year, and I appreciate everybody's rapt attention.
Ms. Gabriel, anything?
Thank you. I don't think I have anything else other than, gosh, thanks to staff. What a whirlwind of info. I appreciate all the work that went into it.
Great, thank you. And I'll just add, since we did have a discussion about council pay, not that there's anybody left watching this meeting, but it's important to point out what those amounts are, which is under 5,000 per year, not per month, for council members, and then roughly, I think around 9, I don't even know, but around 9,000 for the mayor per year, not per month. So those are what, just so people know that it's not significant sums. All right, with that, we're adjourned.